December and the final meeting of our year of the Radnor Township Board of Commissioners. Please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, the first order of business of the last meeting, I need to announce two things, first of all. This Board of Commissioners met in executive session just the last 45 minutes or so, at which time we discussed personnel and litigation. I also want to take note of the fact that on our agenda, under item 6, paragraph A, we are deleting that for tonight. That is the discussion and motion to authorize the township manager to execute a letter to the state legislature to review and amend the heart and lung disability provisions for police officers. Well, with those things out of the way, it's my distinct pleasure and privilege to take note of the fact that our very valuable Commissioner John Fisher, representing Rosemont and Garrett Hill, the 7th Ward, is here tonight for his last time as a member of our Board of Commissioners. He has served for 8 years, 8 years and 33 days, and he served with distinction. So at this time, I would like to go down to the lectern with John and read the resolution honoring him. And John, anytime you want to interrupt me and tell me that none of this is entirely accurate, you're entitled to do that.
I've never done that before.
All right, this is Resolution 2015-134 of the Radnor Township Board of Commissioners honoring Commissioner John Fisher for his service. Whereas Commissioner John Fisher is retiring from the Board of Commissioners after over 8 years of exemplary service, and whereas the Board of Commissioners desires to recognize Commissioner Fisher for that service, and whereas Commissioner Fisher was first appointed as 7th Ward Commissioner on November 27, 2007, was twice elected and served 2 full terms on the Board of Commissioners from January 2008 until December 31st, 2015, which is in the future, and was elected president of the board for the year 2011. And whereas during his tenure, John Fisher was particularly instrumental in finding and rooting out evidence of fiscal mismanagement and ethical misconduct within the township, resulting in the township recovering hundreds of thousands of dollars. And whereas in his 8 years on the board, John Fisher was most effective in ensuring that the board adhere to high standards of openness in the conduct of its business and in strictly adhering to the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. And whereas John Fisher further demonstrated outstanding service by leading the Board of Commissioners in the passage of legislation to upgrade Clem McCrone Park and fully enforcing its landlord-tenant laws, and guaranteeing that the Villanova University expansion approved in 2015 was done in proper conformity with township laws. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township commends John Fisher for exhibiting the highest standards of integrity and leadership for the people of Radnor Township. And so resolved at a duly convened meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township conducted on this 21st day of December 2015. And it's signed by myself and our manager, Bob Zinkowski. So, John, congratulations. Well, John, you're not just another commissioner. You are really at the top of the ladder, as evidenced by that wonderful ovation. And I just have a short plaque that I'm going to read, and this, John, you can take home, and your grandchildren can admire it in future years. The Township of Radnor Award of Recognition is hereby bestowed upon John Fisher in appreciation for his dedicated service to Radnor Township as an elected member of the Board of Commissioners, November 26, 2007 to December 31, 2015, demonstrating the finest in conscientious and responsive leadership and representation for the Radnor Township community. And it's awarded under the authority of the Board of Commissioners this 21st day of December 2015 in the year of our Lord. Okay? Thank you. Again, congratulations.
Well, a few months ago, we passed a resolution by the board to limit our speech time to reduce the length of our meeting, so I'll try to keep this very short. I want to first thank my family because this is definitely a family affair. You cannot be a commissioner in this town without devoting a fair amount of your time, and that usually comes in lieu of your family time. So I want to thank my wife, Jill, and my sons, my two sons, Tommy and Brian, because not only do they not have time with me when I'm at meetings, but they have to hear about it when I get home. So I appreciate that. I also want to thank staff. It's very easy to sit up here and take credit for things that get done. But quite frankly, in my opinion, at least for myself, I really haven't done anything in the last 8 years. Staff have done all the work. We set policy. We give some guidance here and there. But quite frankly, we're blessed right now to have one of the best staff teams that we could possibly have. So with that, I want to thank Bob Zinkowski and all the directors who have made this really the most pleasurable experience that anyone could have. It didn't start that way. 8 years ago when I came into office, we had some issues, and those issues rose to a level of malfeasance. And during that time, we had to let go our manager, and other directors were also either let go or left the township. But what we have in the room tonight is a whole new slate of top-level management that run this township professionally. And I have the highest level of respect for them, and most importantly, trust. And that's not necessarily how it started. So I want to thank all of you for not only doing a great job, but bringing a level of trust to this township that we hadn't seen before that. And I leave on a good note. I leave with all of us in great hands. In my own opinion, I don't have to worry anymore. I think we have a really great running township. I'm not going to take credit for that. I may have take some credit for hiring a few good people, but that's about it. So I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to serve. It's been a pleasure to serve the community, and I look forward to living here a lot longer and enjoying the fruits of all the labor of everyone in the room, and just continue to enjoy this place. So thank you all.
I think I'm supposed to announce Jennifer. Where are you? Am I to invite people to partake in the cake outside, or is that all finished? They can, in celebration of John's retirement. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, while Jim gets back up, I just want to pile on and just say what an honor it has been to serve with John for the last 6 years. He really is a tremendous example of what public service is all about, and a man who worked for the benefit of the community without any agenda ever. And it was really, we will really miss him on this board with his very calm demeanor, his very reasonable approach to things, and the level of respect that he has always paid to all of us, to all of you, to all of our staff. It's a fine example of what public service is about. So thank you.
Right, we have to adhere to our rules, and the rules say that what I read at the lectern is a resolution. And as such, it must be voted upon by the Board.
I'll move the resolution
Commissioners.
2015-134 honoring John Fisher.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, and thank you for the second. And I would be happy to have anybody from the audience that knows John and knows his service to come up and say and talk for as long as you want on this subject. Patty Barker.
Patty Barker, Chair of the Garrett Hill Coalition. I just really wanted to say a brief thank you from the bottom of Garrett Hillians' hearts for your 8 years of service. We could never have gotten through the Garrett Hill zoning district process without you, the Clem-McCrone master plan, and you're going to be missed, but you're going to be in the neighborhood, so no worries. Thank you.
Roberta Winters.
I'm speaking as John's constituent. We have all heard that it is better to give than receive. In my mind, John Fisher, as 7th Ward Commissioner, has been the gift that has kept giving both to his constituents and the township for the past 8 years. He's used his brains to untangle those financial puzzles and redirect Radnor, and is brawn to take on real work, like painting the bathrooms at Clem-McCrone Park. But most of all, he's used his heart to care and make a difference for others. As an elected official, John has not been just a politician. He's been a public servant. May we all aspire to follow his lead. Thank you.
That's very, very nice, Roberta. Thank you. Phil R.
I'll also be brief, but John, I just want to say thank you for your years of service and bring out that you came to us at a pivotal time in Garrett Hill and in Ward 7. And as it turned out, we did not know, but it was a pivotal time for Radnor as well. So in that time, you served with honor, distinction, and a true spirit of public service. And so I think of all the things that Jim mentioned to you about, one was left off, and you don't have to put it in there as a resolution. But I think of all the things that you've done, you've added to the quality of life for the folks in Garrett Hill and Ward 7, and by contrast, by extension, also into Radnor. So we thank you very much for that and for being a great neighbor. Thanks.
I should mention that Mr. R. is the newly elected commissioner for the 7th Ward and will be succeeding John and be sworn in on January the 4th. Mr. Heldring.
Yes, Martin Heldring. I don't want to repeat what was said, but I do think for once the resolution probably didn't quite capture John's contribution to the board. I started coming to these meetings during that period, and I thought you served with fairness, distinction, honesty, ethics, high ethics, but most importantly, modestly. And that was on demonstration right before when you spoke. As one person said to me, when you talk about commissioners, you hear the good and the bad, and I have to say I've never heard anything but good about John, and I would echo that as my feeling as well. Even though at times I don't agree, your opinions are always stated with fairness and with integrity. Frankly, lastly, I would say, when I came to the meeting, I didn't look at the agenda, and I saw the police here, and I really hoped they were going to cordon the doors off and prevent you from leaving. But after looking at the agenda, I guess that's not the case.
Right. Thank you, Martin. Thank you. Thank you. One other statement, at least one more. Yes.
Hi, my name's AJ Engelhard. I'm 15. I'm not going to pretend that I know everything that Mr. Fisher has done for the township. You know, 8 years ago when he was instated, I was 7, so I don't know much. But one thing I do know is that for as long as I can remember, I've been going to the Garrett Hill 4th of July parade, and Mr. Fisher has always been there, whether he's been in the dunk tank or whether he's been selling raffle tickets. He's always been there, and looking back, I think that's really cool because you were always part. You weren't just sitting on some high chair. You were with us, and you were part of the community, and I thank you.
That's great. That's wonderful. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. All right. I don't want to stifle any opinion here. There could be some dissenters if you want to. But all in good fun, though. Okay. The motion has been made and it's been seconded. I'll ask for the vote now. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And John, it passes 7-0. Congratulations. All right, we're going to move now to the police department as an agenda item, and this is some certificates of merit for our men and women in blue. And Superintendent William Colarulo, please.
With your permission, sir, I'll come.
Yes.
I'd like to have Lieutenant Flanagan join me up here, please. And I'd like to thank the commissioners and the township manager for allowing us to do this in a public forum. And I'd also like to thank the brother and sister Radnor officers that are here in support of their peers, which is a very nice gesture on their part. Many of them aren't even working right now, and they're not getting any overtime either. So thank you for that. The first person I'd like to acknowledge is Officer Alex Janoski. So Alex, if you can come up. Alex is a 10-year veteran of the Radnor Township Police Department, and you probably see Alex all the time, even if it's 10 below zero, riding the motorcycle. And he's one heck of an officer, very aggressive, always respectful, does an outstanding job. And Alex is getting a merit commendation tonight, and I'll just read some of the highlights off of it. Officer Alex Janoski, he's assigned as a sworn member of the Radnor Township Police Department Highway Patrol Unit. Over the past 12-month period, Officer Janoski conducted several motor vehicle stops during that time frame. Out of the multitude of vehicle stops that were made, these vehicle stops led to over 15 drug-related cases. Officer Janoski then forwarded this information to our Drug Task Force, and with this information, the Drug Task Force members were able to initiate various investigations which led to several arrests, many which were high profile that you probably saw in the news. But the most important thing Alex did with this information was he got these drugs off the street and he kept our people safe. So I'd like to commend Officer Alex Janoski, Radnor Township Police Department, with a commendation for merit for his act of intelligent, valuable police investigation through highly skilled performance as a Radnor Township police officer. Congratulations. I'm going to need Detective T.J. Schreiber up here first, because he's tech savvy. Yeah, bring that picture up. And I'll explain what he's doing in a second, but this is a coordinated effort between the Radnor Township Police and Villanova Public Safety. So I'd like the following individuals to meet me up here. That will be Officer Steve Ryan, Officer Thomas Matichazek. Detective Schreiber's already here as part of this. And then from the Villanova Department of Public Safety, Sergeant John Tiedemann and Officer Patrick Cole. And just a couple of minutes ago, Commissioner Fisher mentioned how important family is. So I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Lindsay and Dylan, who's Sergeant Tiedemann's wife and 2-year-old daughter? Yeah. There you go. So this individual is a sexual predator. There's no other way to say that. He is 41 years old. His name is Cornwell Chan. He was arrested a couple of years ago where he was banned from Villanova for stalking women, videotaping women, and doing other things that I'd rather not say in a public forum. Well, he did it again. And thanks to these officers from Public Safety and the Radnor Township Police Department, the next time you'll see Mr. Chan maybe is the year 2021, because he's now in prison. So, in November 2015, investigators from Villanova University contacted Detective Schreiber and advised him that the subject, Mr. Cornwell Chan, was once again seen in the Villanova Library on November 29, 2015. Investigators were able to provide video evidence of the violation, and Detective Schreiber, in conjunction with the investigators, proposed a joint liaison plan that if the subject should return to Villanova University. On December 6, 2015, Villanova Officer Patrick Cole and Villanova Sergeant John Tiedemann located the subject's vehicle in an adjacent parking lot to Villanova University. And by the way, that vehicle that was located had no back seat and it had a video camera hidden in it. They immediately notified the Radnor Police to respond. Officer Tom Matichezek, Officer Steve Ryan responded and located the subject inside the library and took the subject into custody. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the officers I just mentioned of the Radnor Township Police Department and of Villanova Public Safety are awarded the Commendation of Merit for their act of intelligent, valuable police investigation through highly skilled performance as Radnor Township police officers and Villanova Public Safety. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chief Colarulo, and thank you, gentlemen, for your great work, great service. All right, we now have additional recognition. This is for our Public Works employees, and Bob Zinkowski.
Thank you, Commissioner. John, to you, on behalf of all the staff, the department heads, and myself, thank you, John, for all your service to us and all your support to the entire staff, myself. You've been a tremendous asset to all of us, a voice of reason, and a tremendous teacher to us. So thank you for all that you've done for all of us. Thank you. Jim Corcoran, if you could join me up here. As everyone, if you haven't realized yet, we are the home to the Sports Legends of Delaware County Museum that has now adorned the halls here to Radnor Township building. Jim has been known for his outstanding work here in the township for the maintenance of our buildings. At one time, there were 3 individuals that used to maintain this building, the Radnor Activity Center, as well as the Public Works building. Through a lot of the different attrition and reduction in staff, Jim is a one-person member now that has taken on all these responsibilities. So he handles this building here, he handles the Radnor Activity Center, and Jim has done a tremendous job with that. and want to thank Jim for all his service. But also, Jim has some other talents, and Jim also draws. And knowing that with the Sports Legend Hall that is here, Jim wanted to also be a part of this and recognize one of our residents, Emlyn Tennell, who had a tremendous career in professional football with the New York Giants, and is a member of the National Football League Pro Football Hall of Fame. And as I know in my 5.5 years here, I know a number of our residents and commissioners have told me about his outstanding career growing up here in Radnor, and being a member here in this Hall of Fame, and joining a lot of other tremendous athletes that have come out of Delaware County, which I know Jim Vankowski, who's the curator of the museum with his wife Barbara. It's amazing to see the talent that has come from Delaware County, which I know Jim boasts that's probably the best in the country that has come around all around out of Delaware County. And Jim took it upon himself to draw the image there of Emlyn Tennell. That is actually an incredible drawing of Emlyn Tennell. To actually take that from a photograph and produce that in, Jim, how long did that take you to draw that? Within a week, a couple weeks?
Couple weeks.
A couple weeks to actually take that and hand draw that is absolutely incredible. So not only did Jim have his job here with the township, to actually take the time and to be able to draw that image. It was in today's Delco Times, was actually put in the paper there. So Jim, again, want to thank you for all that you do here for the township, taking on those responsibilities to where it's a one-person job now that you do, and you do very well at that, but also because of what you have done here for Delaware County and representing Radnor Township. And to the commissioners, thank you for allowing us to be the new home. And it was great to be able to hear all those folks in Delaware County to shake their head and say, we can't believe Radnor Township has done this, or Radnor Township, you know, we didn't know that Radnor was part of Delaware County. Well, welcome to that now, as Radnor Township has always been a part of Delaware County, and it's wake-up time now about how good Delaware County really is and what's produced out of here. So it was great to be a part of that. So Jim, please accept this on behalf of our Board of Commissioners and myself and the entire staff and department heads, to James Corcoran in recognition of your outstanding and detailed work on the portrait of Emlyn Tennell, which is on display at the Sports Legends of Delaware County Museum, presented on today, December 21st, 2015. Jim? Thank you. And then I'm going to ask Jim Vankowski, who's the curator of the museum, and his wife Barbara, the co-curator, if he can come forward. And at this time, Jim, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind presenting that to them, your picture. If you can just hand it to them and formally present that to them for official piece.
Before we do that, I want to present Jim with this book called Delaware County Sports Legends. Now, there's 200.
Mr. Gang, come over to the lectern, please.
There's 250 athletes in this book, so Jim has one down and 249 to go.
Sounds good to me.
And this will be on display in our Emlyn Tennell Gallery, which is on the second floor. So, thank you.
Well, I just like to comment on the fact that the siting of the Delaware County Sports Hall of Fame here in our township building is just a wonderful partnership, because the Hall of Fame had difficulty finding a permanent home. They had been at Granite Run Mall most recently, and before that, I forget where they were, but they couldn't seem to have a permanent home. And I'm hoping, as long as I'm commissioner, that they'll stay here. I'd like to point out also what I think was the very nice way of getting this exhibit started. It came gradually, and as we saw, one picture, one memento, one piece of memorabilia after another came in, they came in slowly, and I said, well, that's great. That's probably the end of it. No, it wasn't. It's been going on week after week after week. I don't know if they're finished or not, but if you have a chance to go upstairs and look at the portraits and the memorabilia, or right out here in our lobby, and people at home that are watching our meeting, do the same. You'll be amazed at the number of fabulous athletes, women and men, that have brought credit to Delaware County and to their institutions. So, Jim, thank you. And Barbara, thank you very much. Okay. All right, I think we are now at public participation, and if anybody would like to come forward and speak that can't stay for the rest of the meeting, they're welcome to do so.
Martin Heldring, 305 Audubon Avenue. John, there's still 3 police here, so I'm holding out hope. Maybe I can talk to them afterwards. A couple of comments. One, I know over the past several months and years, really, there's been a lot of discussion up here about the length of the meetings, with some justification, because sometimes they run to 1 or 2 in the morning. But just as an aside, today's meeting started 42 minutes late. And I recognize that there might be some very important issues that go on in there, but out of respect and common courtesy to the people in the room, I think meetings should start on time and to your own schedules. And secondly, it's a little bit more awkward and difficult for you all to complain about the length of the meetings when you're starting them 42 minutes late. So I would just keep that in mind the next time you have that discussion. Some of us out there are thinking, what are they talking about? And we forget these very moments. So remember, December, whatever we are, 42 minutes late. I have a couple of comments, and I can't stay, but they also relate to the last meeting. I wanted to thank Commissioner Schaefer for raising the issue with regard to the investment policy last meeting. Just so you recall, it was the issue around raising the limit to 15 to 25% for sub-investment grade paper. And I looked online to find the policy. I'm sure it's there. It's my fault. I couldn't find it. But just as an aside, to approve a policy that takes that from 15 to 25% without putting some parameters around it. For example, double B paper is probably fine, but below that you go to single B, you go to triple B, you get into distressed areas. That would be wildly inappropriate for this kind of investment purpose. Secondly, the conversation was, the process was around, well, we need this investment return, so we're going to take this kind of risk. And that's exactly backwards. You're talking about largely pension money. You should be talking about what kind of risk is appropriate for that money, and that what kind of return it produces, and then decide what you can invest in from there. And what are the ramifications of that? Maybe you can't get 7.5%. I've been up here talking about that before. I'd love to know where you get 7.5% in an appropriate manner. I don't think it's very easy. And lastly, I just note you should probably have some conversations with, I think it was PFM, in the last 2-3 weeks, the leveraged market, both bond and loans, meltdown is probably too strong a word, but severe stress, driven by drops in commodity prices, driven by end-of-year re-engineering, driven by lack of liquidity. So if you were invested in those instruments right now and you looked and you all of a sudden saw losses and you said, I want to get out, not easy. So that's something to talk to PFM about. Second issue I want to talk about was the tax increase. 4% tax increase in an environment where wages, other than maybe in the public sector, are largely not increasing. For senior citizens who are either getting no Social Security increase or maybe modest, I think none, it's a serious issue and required a serious conversation up here. And there were some parts of it that I didn't think were as serious as they should have been. Specifically, there were comments from Mr. Higgins and Commissioner Schaefer with regard to no tax increases in 3 years, but you can't say that and then be silent on the fee increase. If you're a taxpayer or a resident of Radnor, you write checks to Radnor Township. Some of them are taxes, some of them are fees. I frankly don't care. The only difference to them is whether or not they might be deductible from an IRS perspective. Might be. For many, they are not deductible. Otherwise, I am indifferent. It's the cost of living in Radnor. So to say there's been no increase in the cost of living in Radnor in the last 3 years is, I think, not appropriate. And it's been said a number of times, and people have been up here before and said that, and complained about it, and I would hope that that would stop. Secondly, I think when people think about the role of local government, they think police, fire, roads, waste collection. Those are the big four for me. Now you talk parks and library and a bunch of other things, but it's hard to dislodge the top four, in my opinion. And you have borrowed roughly $20 million for parks and library and purchase of land. You've got a fire department running at a deficit, and you've got roads, at least the roads I drive on, are not in good shape. So I think a discussion of priorities would have been appropriate during that discussion. And lastly, there is a reference to CARFAC, and you recall I suggested that the borrowing should be sent to CARFAC as to whether or not it was appropriate, and apparently it was, but I would note that it was sent after the fact. What's the point of deciding that you're going to borrow, and then after that, calling up CARFAC and saying, "What, do you think it's a good idea?" It just struck me when I heard that discussion from Commissioner Schaefer like a guy with a drinking problem calling his doctor and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, I got a drinking problem, but I don't want you to talk about that. You don't want to talk about the payments, the spending, but what do I do about my hangover? Oh, by the way, I already had a Bloody Mary." I mean, that's what it sounded like when I was listening there. It was just silly to bring CARFAC into that at that point, but it was helpful to me because that's exactly why I resigned from CARFAC. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heldring. Your comments are, as usual, helpful. I'll only comment on one thing, and that's why that has to do with the reason we were so late tonight. It's highly unusual that we start a meeting that late. And the reason we did tonight was we were backed up with a number of interviews for our boards and commissioners. I think we had, what do we have, Bob, 6, 7, 8 interviews? And it's pretty hard when you have a person who's come into the township building, given up their own personal time and want to be heard and want to talk, to cut them off and say, well, we don't have time for you. So that was the dilemma we had tonight. We started at 5:30, and we had some police business in executive session, but we do our best every week. I think we all will agree to that, to move along, and I can promise that next time I'll crack the whip and try to get our executive session meeting finished sooner, quicker. Okay, Mr. Gemmer.
Baron Gemmer, South Wayne Avenue. I figured you didn't want to hear me talk twice, so I consolidated my comments. Otherwise, I would have come up for Commissioner Fisher's thank you. So I'd like to do that at this time. I don't think I can add too much to what already been said, particularly Martin's prior comments about John's modesty. The amount of effort you put into this job, because that's what it was, and the diligence is just incredible. And as he said, the ethics and integrity and the openness was great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I very much appreciate that. To segue on that, as well as what Commissioner Higgins was just talking about in terms of the other boards and the interviewing, I'd like to recognize some folks that are retiring off other boards that I've, in my personal opinion, have just given outstanding service to this township also. And this is by no means comprehensive, just the ones that I particularly observe. From zoning, Noah Cutler is retiring this year. Planning Commission, Doug McCone, who I believe also was the Shade Tree representative, so he was at a lot of meetings. And from Harb, Andrea Pilling, Beverly Barnes, and Cam Lacey, who I believe all three of those were from the inception of the from that board, which in and of itself is a long time, but also to be the ones that had to, find their way and get that board going to where it is now. I want to particularly thanks to them. So, John, thank you again, and thanks to all the retiring board members.
Thank you, Baron. Yeah, those retirements, particularly on Harb, are going to leave a big vacuum that we're going to have to fill somehow with good people. Is there anybody else that would like to say anything now, this time? Okay, I think we're now up to item 5 on the agenda, which is our consent agenda. And as I have said at every meeting, the purpose of the consent agenda is to move the general meeting quickly, to get through items that don't require much analysis. And our staff has already reviewed all of these and looked at them closely and are recommending to us that we approve them. And so on the consent agenda, we just take them as a block, and we vote yes or no on them as a block. But there is the right of any commissioner or any member of the public, for that matter, to ask that we take any one of the items off the consent agenda. And tonight we have items A through H. So I'll ask the question if any commissioner wants to remove any item.
I'd like to remove item H, please.
All right, we'll certainly do that. Anybody else want to remove anything? All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through G?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Fisher, we're going to give you the second on that.
Get your name.
All right. Do we debate this or discuss it? We just move ahead. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion carries 7-0. And Commissioner Booker, please go ahead on item H.
Item H is Resolution 2015-130, authorizing a contract with the U.S. Department of Agriculture for professional deer culling and geese control services. I just wanted to get an update on on this program and where we are with having volunteers using bow hunting to affect this result rather than rifles.
Yes, we still will be using the independent company to still be able to complement the USDA in this. Our hope is this may be the last year that we'll be using the USDA, and that we'll be using this organization to handle the deer calling in the township.
Is the price down from last year, $50,000?
Commissioner, yes, it's down to approximately $12,000 from last year. And like Mr. Zinkowski said, the plan all along, because I know Commissioner Curley inquired about it, eventually wean ourselves off of using the USDA, and then the private hunters will take care of the rest. So far, we have over 750 deer that were culled in the last 3 years. It's been a very successful program. Mr. Gallagher, who runs it, also would attest to the fact that the number of deer that caused accidents has been dramatically down in the township. And if you need any more specific information, I do have the people that are responsible for the deer calling if you have any specific questions.
So, well, just at least one of my constituents is very adamant that we should be allowing the club hunters to be able to do this. It would be lower cost and potentially what they would believe would be safer as well. So,
well,
I know that's an arguable point, but there are people that want to do this in the township.
Well, we do allow private hunters at certain parts of the township. As far as safety, I don't think you can get any safer than the USDA, but I will have my staff just corroborate that information.
Thank you for your comment. Commissioner, in reference to private hunters, I'm sorry. In reference to private hunters, Commissioner, any landholder in Radnor Township can allow archery hunters onto his property, as long as he conforms to the rules and regulations of the Game Commission. That's not something the township has the right to control. The only thing that we do with our private archers is we give them access to a very limited number of township parks, which I know over the past couple of years has been a point of contention with some of you people for safety and obvious reasons, which we totally get. So, but as far as private hunters, they can come in and hunt on private property as long as they get permission from the property owner. So it doesn't limit that in any way. Yeah, like I said, they have to follow.
We are allowing a limited amount of bow hunting on township property. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
And my understanding is that's, there's a compromise element there. There are, because, so I sat with the people from the organization that are doing it, and I was very comfortable with the safety that they identified. I know the staff is comfortable. And then there's also a sizable number of people for whom this is recreation. So to me, I think it's prudent for you to proceed in that manner, which is a limited amount on township properties that you identify are appropriate, and continue to allow that group to proceed.
And that is, in my understanding, that is what the plan is, sir.
Good, thank you.
Can I just intercede that I know that we are allowing very limited to the parks that aren't used, but in my ward, we have had conflict, and we have had residents very scared, alarmed, and seeing hunters. So if we decide that when we're done with the USDA that we are going to have a partnership with this group, it has to be very carefully crafted and monitored. Our parks, they can only hunt during the daytime. And the daytime is when our residents use our parks.
Sure.
So you can imagine the conflict.
Absolutely.
So, and it exists. So there are indeed parks there where there is no human activity. Mm-hmm. And so those parks are probably where you're letting them go now. But any park that has any human activity, we have to work very hard to manage that relationship if and when it comes about.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. And much in the way, like an archery hunter couldn't go to your personal home and hunt in your backyard without express permission from you, no one can go into these township properties and hunt without the express permission of Mr. Zinkowski or yourself. So that should not be an issue. And if it is, they're violating game laws, and we can enforce them that way.
And the hunting that we're talking about is only the bow hunting.
That's
clear
correct.
that some people might think that you can rifle hunt on township property, and that's not the case.
No, no, there's no rifle hunting in Radnor Township. I know before the farm got divided up and developed, they used to use shotguns for geese and stuff like that, but that had nothing to do with the township and nothing to do with the deer program.
Would like to add that our police department has done a nice job with being able to manage this program and working very closely with the private hunting club. And then also one of our residents, Austin Hepburn, has done a nice job of being able to work with our staff too. So we've been able to do a nice job with being able to manage this program. But all along, I think from the original meeting we've had at the library with residents, is to be able to turn this program over to this private club.
So I'm going to recommend for 2016 that an ordinance be drafted to allow and facilitate this, the hunting by hunting clubs, and have that ordinance spell out the terms, the restrictions, the oversight, and such. While it's working now, I think it's a good test, but I think really it should be by ordinance, and there should be, should also have enforcement, for those that are not following the ordinance. We should have remedy. So if a rogue hunter decides to go into one of our parks and hunt, there would be additional fines. But we need to have, if we want to transfer over from the USDA program, it's going to take quite some planning to do that. So I would recommend that ordinance be drafted.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll have it in black and white then, what the rules are. Archery, firearms, private property.
Just archery.
Okay, just archery.
No firearms.
Okay.
Just as a suggestion, we have already done the enforcement because we have had issues over at Odoricio Park where we have gotten tree stands because residents are very vigilant in telling us and pointing out individuals who are deciding to get in there with bow hunting, and we have enforced issues with hunting, with private individuals hunting. So,
if I may, just to piggyback on back of that, one of the benefits of having this Chester Valley Deer Manager Group out there is they're in the parks where we give them. They're on the private properties, and they see the poachers and they see the guys and ladies, whoever that may be, that are doing the illegal hunting. And let's be honest, patrolmen aren't in the back of the parks in the woods all the time. And these guys are, and they see these stands and they see the remnants of people being there, and they report it to us. And therefore, our enforcement efforts have been coming more cover to the entire township.
Okay. Do you have anything more, Rich? Before you leave, Mr. Gallagher, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the geese program.
Okay. Probably back, I guess it was April, maybe May, just in that area, we had talked with the USDA about a geese control program. And they said that they would set it up for us with the money that we were saving from our deer program last year. Talked to the manager, and he said, yeah, let's give it a shot at the Willows and see what happens. To start out the geese program, all they can do is harass them. So they use fireworks, they use flares, they use light, all different kinds of stuff. Well, I guess a month or two ago, I went over to the Willows every morning, like 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, just different times. I saw one goose, and he must have been a stray that got lost. But talking to the guys that cut the grass in the parks, the guys that clean the parks, they say it's an amazing turnaround right now. I mean, they're not wearing helmets to cut the grass, if you know what I'm saying, which is incredible. So the only place we have been doing it is the Willows, because it's just a test. But in my opinion, anyway, it's working real well.
Chief, and Bob, do you see us going to other parks to get rid of this problem?
Eventually, we would look to do that. I think we would go to the 3-year test, because I believe at that point then we would have the potential then to do the same as what we would look at in the deer program. But this has been effective. In a number of the other parks, I don't think we have as much of a problem, I don't believe. I'm not sure at Ditmar we have much of an issue. So it would be, I think right now, the Willows seems to be the only issue that we have right now. So if we can mitigate the problem here at the Willows, I don't think we have any other issue in any of the other parks right now. So this has been working very well. So
well, I know we have
this.
problems on our colleges. I know Eastern College has ponds. They have bad problems, and I know that in Commissioner Schaefer's ward at Trianon, there have been real problems.
I know that we have worked with Trianon, and I believe there has been some.
So far, so good. I haven't gotten many complaints. Been down there a couple times. Haven't seen anything.
And just one last thing, the fact that you have this chart here to tell us how well we've done on the deer culling.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that after the year 2013, the estimate was 61.5 deer per square mile. That was after we took out 250. And then the next year, 2014, the number was down to 43.5 deer per square mile. And then after this year, well, let's see, we haven't started yet, so I'm not sure how this number
Well,
should be
in
interpreted.
April, we got down, after the last round, we got down to 11 deer per square mile, but that was before fawning.
Okay.
And then we just, literally in November, the end of November, we did the survey. And the results of that survey came back 23 deer.
So we're down at two-thirds.
Hopefully, we're hoping that this year we do 10 nights, 100 is our goal, 100 deer. We'll be down under that 15 into the 10 to 15 range where we're gold.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I think now we can go back to the last item that Commissioner Booker had removed, which was the deer culling program. And is there a motion to
I move we approve
approve that?
Resolution 2015-130.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any comment from the members of the board or from the staff or the audience? All right. I don't see any, so we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And it carries 7-0. Thank you. Okay. We're now down to proposed ordinance 2016-001. Okay, we're already into the new year on this one. And this is an agreement of sale for property at Ardrossan involving Boy Scout Troop, I think it's 284, sorry. And we have Peter Nelson Esquire from the Grimm, Bean, and Thatcher law firm here to help us through this one.
Yeah, what you have before you I believe this is just for caucus. It's not actually up for a vote tonight, but just to start the discussion, is a simple ordinance under the Radnor's Home Rule Charter. In order to sell property, the charter requires an ordinance to be adopted by the Board of Commissioners. After the ordinance is the agreement of sale that has been prepared. This is a draft document. It was originally prepared by the Boy Scouts Council. My office has reviewed it. If you have any questions regarding it, I can certainly answer them. If you want me to go through it, I can do that also.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just going to give a little background and history
Yes.
of where we are right now with this. First, it is up for introduction tonight. It's listed on our agenda as introduction. So this is the two acres where where the Boy Scout house is now and 2 acres surrounding it. When we purchased the Wheeler tract from the Montgomery Scott family, we began this discussion with Troop 284 about them retaining or gaining ownership to that cabin. They've been renting that cabin from the family for decades, I think 50+ years. They've had a really great history there. It's a very low impact use, an incredible service for our township. It's been a really nice partnership for us and for the Scouts. So we, back then, over a year ago, started the discussions of how they could keep that property, or they could gain ownership of that property. At this point, we might be introducing an ordinance that would be an agreement of sale. Two clauses in this agreement of sale say that it won't close until we have come to agreement, the township and the Scouts, on some outstanding issues, and those all involve their use and restrictions on their use. So they can't build more, things like that. The restrictions on how they could grow on that property, and on on the township retaining right-of-way for the trail that will be going on Darby Paoli Road. So those details will have to be worked out, and logistically how that will happen is if this agreement of sale gets passed, this is the introduction tonight. In 2 weeks or 4 weeks, we'll have an adoption. Once the agreement is set in place, they will be equitable owners, and they will go to the Planning Commission and of our township and the County Planning Commission for a subdivision. And that subdivision process is where all of these details will be worked out, agreements will be made, and those agreements and restrictions will become basically conditions of the approval of the subdivision. After it gets through Planning Commission and of our Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission, then it will come back to this board for final approval of the subdivision and all of the terms that were conditions of the approval. And I'm giving all of this logistics and history because many people are interested in this and they want to kind of hear how it goes. There are many people in the neighborhood that are interested in it. So from here forward, the details that will get meted out will be at the Planning Commission level when the subdivision goes through. So I hope that is clear. And if I've gotten anything wrong, the counsel for the Scouts is here in the audience, and they're welcome to come up and correct me.
Oh, thank you, Arlene. Does any other commissioner want to say anything on it? Peter, I did send an email to John Rice today. I reviewed it,
Correct. I did see that, and those are changes that, can be taken care of.
Okay.
And we appreciate your review. An extra set of eyes is always useful.
It's the lawyer in me, I'm sorry to do that
That's
to you.
So a couple of questions. The price that we talked about, that's an appraisal price, correct?
That's
So we're just sort of passing it through at the appraised price?
That's the price the township paid per acre when they purchased we purchased the farm from, or the land from Ardrossan.
And the process that Elaine identified is the process identified in the closing section referred to as project approvals?
Correct.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to comment on the Boy Scout agreement?
Jim, can I ask a question and
sure.
voice a concern? Question in the purchase price section, acreage to be net of any easement requirement by the township for the township's future use. So I see that there's an 80-foot right-of-way that extends, I'm not sure how long. So is that going to decrease the acreage they're buying? Am I reading this correctly? Is that going to lower the purchase price based upon that easement, that right-of-way?
So the road right-of-way will not decrease the purchase price.
Introduce yourself.
Dave Falcone, Saul Ewing here on behalf of the Scouts. What we're getting at there, Luke, is any additional land that's needed for the trail that goes outside of the required right-of-way would be netted out of the purchase price. So we understand the right-of-ways, the townships, that's a natural right-of-way, and that won't affect the purchase price. But to the extent the trail is required to go outside of that, encroach on land that would otherwise be acquired by the Scouts, we would expect and have agreed that there will be a reduction in the purchase price to net that cost out.
And my only, just a concern in reading this, I see that they're being deed restricted, and there's no consideration for that whatsoever?
No consideration for the restrictions that will be placed on during subdivision, and that was something that was part of our discussions with the township when we entered into the initial discussions to acquire the property, and it's also been part of our discussions with the Lawrence Lane neighbors, which are ongoing. They're an active part of this process, and as we get this going forward through the subdivision, we'll hopefully bring forth an agreement with those neighbors that will reflect those discussions and the agreements we've made with them.
Thanks, Dave.
And just to clarify the difference between the rights that we're giving, that they're giving away in the trail and the other building rights, the way that the trail is going to go in there, once everything's settled down and we went and walked, the right-of-way that we wouldn't pay for is actually just one steep hill. I mean, that's the topography. So we couldn't put the trail on the regular right-of-way. There's just no way to do it. So the actual trail is going to go beyond the right-of-way, which it does encroach into what they're buying. So it's a little different than the restrictions that they're willing to take.
Well, I want to make sure I have the sequence right here. The price is to be determined after your client, Mr. Falcone, is informed as to the nature and extent of the township's needs for additional land for the trails. All right. Now, when does all that happen?
No, the price is set. What actually is going to change is the amount of land they're purchasing. And so to determine the amount of land, Mr. Chairman, they're going to have to submit their subdivision plans. This property is going to have to be subdivided off the rest of the township property, and it has to go through that process. So as part of those engineered plans, they're going to determine, at that point in time, we will determine where the trail is actually going to go. And once we determine where the trail goes, we can then determine how much easement, if any, we need.
Okay, I see.
And then we know how much land the Boy Scouts are actually buying.
So the price is going to be paid, that's firm,
The
set
per
aside
acre
at
price is
closing,
firm.
And then sometime after closing, when subdivision unfolds, then
Yes.
we'll know.
No, so we can't close until we subdivide, because the parcel now is the entire tract. So we need to go through the subdivision process as an equitable owner before we close, so that we can come to an actual parcel that's separate from the overall farm piece, and then buy that parcel. So it will actually close after subdivision, and we'll have a firm number based on the agreed upon per acre
Then the
price.
credits will be exchanged.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. And I think I've asked for audience questions. I think it's been It hasn't been moved. We didn't have a motion. We don't need a motion, John?
I'll move the introduction of ordinance 2016-01.
Yeah.
This is just a discussion item.
It's on the agenda as an introduction of an
Introduction,
ordinance.
yes. It's not, yeah, you're not
right.
approving the agreement of sale at
Okay.
this point in
But it's an
time.
introduction.
Okay, and
I have a question
Okay.
before we vote on it. So this agreement of sale, and it's lacking all of the detail that I would expect to see because the detail hasn't worked out yet. The question is, will the agreement of sale be revised once the subdivision process has analyzed the parcel?
No, the agreement of sale is, if it is approved by the board at your meeting in January, it will then be executed by the parties. That will then make the troop an equitable owner of the property so they can then apply for the subdivision. The agreement of sale is written in such a way that through the subdivision process and through the township's control of that process and ultimate approval of the subdivision, we will be able to put in place the various changes to the plan or agreements regarding buffering the trail, use of the property, deed restrictions. That's all going to be put in place during the land development process. And the agreement of sale contemplates that taking place at that time.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and it passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, we now have community development, and I think this is Commissioner Schaefer. Oh, Curley, I'm sorry.
I don't know, is this Rich, is your
It's
item?
Commissioner Booker, I think.
Well, it's an item that Commissioner Booker wanted us to address. Go ahead.
Okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go down to the podium here and open up our presentation. It's not really a presentation, it's pictures really, right, we have right here, but, come on. I'd ask Mr. Marshall to come up here and go through these. Oh, okay, good, sorry about that, thank you.
Sorry.
Hello, Matt Marshall, 228 Walnut Avenue, Wayne.
Over the last few weeks and months, I've been in contact with several people in the community, including Mr. Marshall and others, regarding the concept of an enhancement zone for certain areas in the township in the 2nd and 3rd wards. The enhancement zone is basically designed to be a gateway area for Radnor, and it already exists, but we want to augment the already existing enhancement zone. And the areas that are in discussion encompass the I-476 exit area onto Lancaster Avenue, including the Cairn and Griffin construction areas that are part of the landscape, the exit islands, where we have some stone features, the stone obelisk areas at Radnor High School properties, immediately across from that location, as well as on the corner of Lancaster and Radnor Chester Road, and also the traffic island areas along Lancaster Avenue and Route 30, where there's also some more landscaping features and stone features. So we have had some preliminary discussions with some of the private entities in the area, and the concept is that the private entities would be able to contribute funds for the maintenance, upkeep, and improvement of these areas with these stone structures, including landscaping and other enhancement. So basically the concept is that we'd be partnering with some of the large landholders in the area to improve and augment our existing gateway areas into the township. And we've spoken with the local universities as well as some of the other developers at the 145 King of Prussia Road location, Brandywine, as well as the developer at the, I think it's 751 Lancaster Avenue, Mr. Holt. So Matt and I, and and others, have talked about this area, and so Matt has put together some pictures of the areas that we're talking about. And once again, we want to improve this as a gateway area for the township. It's already got substantial stone features, and it serves as a unique feature for Radnor. It's part of what makes Radnor a special area, and we want to just improve that, so that especially these areas that the township is currently maintaining. And why don't you go through some of these?
I will, and just some background. These photographs were taken yesterday, so this is existing conditions, Sunday afternoon. Basically, what Commissioner Booker is talking about is just an enhancement to the gateway. Now, there are areas, I started on the eastern end in Villanova, and there's clearly some nice landscaping, and the staff's done a great job of keeping some of the plantings going through the spring. But then as you get further west, and what I would say, this is my commuter shed, and this is what every resident and every visitor to Radnor starts to see as we go a little further west from Villanova, is these areas where they're dead zones. And I've talked to Commissioner Clark, I've expressed this to Commissioner Curley and Commissioner Booker. If this is what the residents are seeing on their way to work every day, just imagine the parent who comes to Villanova to, you know, wish their kid goodbye, and trash covering the roadway, you know, dead branches, debris, a number of entrances to the 476 on-ramps are littered with cigarette butts. I mean, we're all, you know, seeing the same thing every day when we drive, but I just wanted to demonstrate this. This was yesterday afternoon. You know, there's some areas that we could certainly improve on, and particularly in the spring when you can do some plantings and installations and generally just make this a more welcoming place. So I applaud the staff for what they've done. I think we can just do a little bit better job.
So as it currently exists, and keep going, I want to show the cairn area. And so right there, stop. So that's the exit off of 476, or that's actually the entrance onto 476, that area. And you can see the triangular area there, which is our landscape area. And you can see the stone. We use them for Easter eggs, I guess, in the springtime. That's one of the areas we're talking about. And keep going, Matt.
Sure.
And you can see the keep going. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. There we go. Okay. So, and then here is the stone area where we have the cairn is on top of that, and you can, and the cairn itself, I think, is starting to actually crumble a little bit. I know that that's been there 40 years or more, and it was all perfectly shaved down as far as any of the trees. So that whole area, and I know Steve has had the guys out there, and they've taken out a lot of vegetation. But what I would propose also is we take out all of that to leave that an exposed mound area right there. So we take out all those trees that have grown up. So what we've talked about doing is, again, having this enhancement zone. It's mostly the 3rd Ward, actually. A portion of it is also on the high school. And what we'd like to do is to talk about the ways where we could have this be even a more striking area and even better gateway for the township and for our area right there at going to Villanova and to other locations. And there has been expressed by the local private folks there a willingness to participate in this and to contribute financially. Now, I've also talked with Commissioner Nagel and others who have indicated that we do have a trust area already set aside in this area, so would have to coordinate with that and ensure that either we maximize what we are doing right there or utilize the existing structure rather than putting in a new type of a zone unless that would be necessary. And the other element of it relates to PennDOT owns a portion of this. So there's actually, these are PennDOT areas, which we've already got an agreement with PennDOT to maintain these areas. So we probably wouldn't need to do anything more. But that's the concept. And once again, it's private assistance to the township and augmenting the township and its appearance, and not putting that as part of the public burden.
Right. So anybody want to say anything at this point? Luke, you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously being in my ward, I'm interested in it. I think it's a great idea, and I hope it's something that we can get done. I'm happy to take part in it however I can. So I support it. I know it's been brought up before, so I'll be anxious to figure out why it wasn't completed and hopefully fix the problem or come at it a different way.
Again, I don't think there's a problem. I think that these are already areas that are very well maintained. But what we want to do is not just our traffic islands, et cetera, but also to ensure that we have as much of that area representing our entranceway to the township, and put some additional resources in there to make sure it sparkles, I guess.
So, Rich, have you reached out to Clint Stonebeck yet and the RECT, the Radnor Enhancement Community Trust?
No, I haven't. We haven't talked about that. And
so they just so you know that, I mean, there's been some history there, but I believe they have somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 of revenues, or not revenues, but assets that were being held for the use in Wayne. But that original RECT was set up, in fact, for the gateway that you're talking about. And as I understand it, the corporations that were in that location at the time contributed to that fund, but those monies were used and spent.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, you want to do some more of the same, which is great.
Yeah.
And I think you just need maybe either leverage what they've already done, or you create a new enhancement trust.
Yeah, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel in terms of administration or coordination with staff and license and the actual work. I have had an opportunity to speak to some of the larger property owners. Some of the development that's coming is obviously spurring this. Just the condition of the intersection between 476 and 30, it's just looking run down. And I think, as a resident, as a taxpayer, if people are willing to do this with private funding, and we can do it with Bob Zinkowski and his staff, we think that would be a good way to move forward. So thank you for your consideration.
I just want to, I think this is fantastic to have, some residents and people getting together to talk to our private businesses and to our universities about partnering for contributing to some of to the needs that we have. I would like to spend a little more time before this moves forward talking about what, if we were able to leverage some money from these landowners, what we would use that money for. In that exact area in our 2017 long-range planning, we're spending like $1 million on traffic adaptation system. And in my opinion, if we can establish relationships with these business owners and universities whose clients and customers are causing the traffic, a lot of them, that would be where I would want to see the money. I don't get any complaints about the grass. I get 10 complaints a week about the traffic there. So I feel like if we could, it's wonderful to have these relationships, to cultivate them and to get these partnerships going. I think we might be better served, or our taxpayers might be better served relieving them of a burden they're going to have next year, which is these traffic adaptation systems right in that interchange. And that would be fantastic if we could, find a way to use those funds, those private funders and that partnership to ease some of that burden that our taxpayers are facing next year. We don't know how we're going to come up with that money right now. It's not, we don't have a revenue source for it. So this is great. I'm really encouraged that we have these conversations going with these private entities, and hopefully, that we could really solve a great need there.
Also, I guess I would make the point, we do have, Villanova is contributing, I think, about $172,000. The counsel for Villanova's here, he might remember, but it's something like 172, at least we got that contribute, or 175, there you go. And then I think we did put some money in the budget, roughly 600,000 for traffic adaptive. I think that there is still a gap on that, right? But there is some funding in that for at this point. So we could always use more.
Yeah. Don, do you have anything you want to say? All right. I have a little history here, Rich. Those cairns and the plinths were all installed in the mid-'80s, 1984, 85. The company that we hired, I was on the Board of Commissioners then. The company we hired was run by a gentleman named Ron Fleming from Cambridge, Mass. And we did some good things there. But it's been 31 years, not 40. But it does need a facelift. It does need to be picked up. But here's the concern I'm in favor of this. The concern I have is that there's a finite amount of money, funds, to do this and to fix the traffic problems that we already have on Route 30 and which will be exacerbated by additional development. So when we go to Penn Medicine or to Mr. Caruso's development or to any of the Radnor Chester Road people, I think we've got to be mindful of the fact that we need to fix our traffic problems, and we need to plan ahead for the aggravation of those problems. And so there's going to be competition for funds with these organizations. We just have to be careful how we approach it. Anybody in the audience want to comment? So that's just a presentation. We don't have to take any action here. Thank you very much for that. All right, let's move ahead now. We're up to, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink.
Commissioner, if I could introduce, we have Heather Gill, who's the chair of the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee, and she provided a memo for our packet as well as a quick update. And following her is Dan Weibel, who is our stormwater administrator, who is going to provide some additional modeling of the flooding at Banbury Way, which was requested at a previous meeting.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, Heather.
Hi, good evening. We're here tonight to seek action from the board on two things. As outlined in the memo, we are looking for authorization for the design, permitting, and preparation of construction bid documents for an underground stormwater facility to mitigate flooding and reduce downstream stormwater impacts, and this would occur at the Banbury Francis Way location. Secondly, we're also here tonight to seek action on a watershed assessment, specifically Gulf, Darby, and Meadowbrook watersheds. We're seeking authorization to solicit proposals to analyze the 3 remaining watersheds in Radnor Township. The assessment would include modeling of the watersheds, identifying location for mitigation projects, preparing concepts and cost estimates, and other miscellaneous documents. This will result in a township-wide prioritization list of stormwater measures to ensure the best use of stormwater fee funding. And with that said, I'm going to introduce Dan, and he is going to provide some slides. Just want to say that Dan has performed additional analysis per request by the board, and we're here tonight to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, while that's loading, just to echo what Heather said, I'm really here just to have a few slides to go through, really just as a follow-up to the presentation I gave last month on the Ithan Creek stormwater assessment. I believe Commissioner Curley in particular was asking about some additional modeling that could happen to more clearly indicate some of the reduction in flooding that we were proposing for the different options at Banbury and Francis. I might need help. Middle? So while this is loading, what we did is, again, at the request of the commission, we took the results that we previously presented for the different options, 3 different storage options at Banbury and Francis, and we've illustrated them graphically at that location to show the spread of the flooding and the depths of the flooding, hopefully in a clearer way, so that it's hopefully more obvious what each different storage option is going to offer in terms of reduced flooding.
So I have a question I can ask without us seeing the thing.
Sure.
A start-off question. So your model did I think the 1 year, the 5 year, the 10 year, and the 25 year. And I
Yes.
remember at some point you did some sort of, or maybe it was Steve, that somebody did an analysis of how often actually these storms happen. You know, a 25-year storm does not only happen every 25 years. Do you recall, what came from that analysis?
Yes, I do. So at Steve's request, we did look at actual storm data over the past 20 years. And as you mentioned, we looked at the 5-year, 10-year, and 25-year 1-hour storms. And as a point of comparison, the 25-year 1-hour storm is about equal to the second largest storm Radnor has seen in the past 20 years, intensity-wise.
Okay.
So that's about 2.4 inches an hour intensity.
That's a very big storm. And so that's...
That's not which I don't, you weren't saying that it's happening more frequently. You were just saying that's the intensity of it. That's the magnitude of that event.
That's correct.
That's a 25-year event is a significant event, is what is the conclusion from that.
That's correct, yes.
But it's not happening like once a year.
Not necessarily, no.
Wait, how often is it happening?
Well, it's happened once over the past 20 years.
Once.
I can say that.
Okay.
Right, but each year it has a 25 and 100% chance of occurring every year.
That's correct.
It just so happens it's only happened one time within the last 20.
That intensity-wise, yes, exactly.
And you said that it's the second worst storm. So there was actually, in those 20 years, there was a storm that was worse.
Correct.
So in those 20 years, we've had 2 extremely bad storms.
Yes.
One would be covered by this system, one would not be.
Correct.
Right, okay.
So it finally opened up. This is the same exact summary table that I presented a month ago for the different options, just quickly going through those. Option 1 is size for the 5-year 1-hour storm. That's about 1.8 inches per hour. The low cost was about $480,000. The high cost for that was about $680,000. And the reduction in the 5-year 1-hour flood volume is 100%. It was designed for that size storm. The reduction in the 10-year storm is about 73%. The reduction in the 25-year storm is about 56%. Next option was the 10-year 1-hour storage size. That's about 2 inches of runoff. The price range was from $650,000 to a little over $900,000. Now this option would reduce the 5-year and the 10-year storms by 100% and the 25-year storm by 82%. And then finally, the 25-year option, that's the 2.4 inches I mentioned. That would, of course, eliminate all 3 of these storm events, the flooding associated with these events, by 100%. The new part of the analysis is illustrated in the next several graphics. Again, I only have a few slides to go through here. These are fairly self-explanatory, I hope. This is the, it's getting cut off a little bit. I'm not sure why, but it's getting cut off on the screen here. That's actually the 25-year, 1-hour event under existing conditions. So you can see what the model predicts. And really, this is the result of two different models, I should say. This is a detailed hydraulic model that we did combined with a surface flooding model. So we kind of took the results of the detailed hydraulic model, which takes into account pipes, and we put those results onto this surface flooding model.
So right here, we see that basically the Wawa's under 6 inches of water, and then the deepest part there is almost 4 feet.
That's correct.
In the middle, right there on Banbury Way.
That's correct. According to the model, models are only as accurate as the input information, obviously. We didn't do any detailed surveying of this location. We're just using publicly available topography. But we are seeing exactly what you said, Commissioner Booker, about 4 feet. That's the red area right there where it says 406. And then obviously the spread gets shallower as we move out to less than half a foot at the fringe, which is the blue area. So then moving on, this is the same storm event, but for the 5-year. I'm sorry, it's getting cut off. This is the 25-year, 1-hour event, 5-year storage design. So same storm size, but for the 5-year storage. And that's what that looks like. Again, this is, for this particular storm, this is the lowest, the least amount of storage that we can provide in terms of what we looked at. So there is some reduction, as you can see, going from existing to that option. And going forward to this 10-year storage design, again, even further reduction in the flooding.
Dan,
yes.
The paper copy doesn't show the same colors that you're showing on the screen.
Yes. You're breaking his rhythm. He's got some good flow to it.
I know.
Yes, the version.
I want to make sure I understand it and other people understand it.
Yes, it's the same results, same analysis. The version that you're looking at here on the screen, this is at a more refined scale. We were trying to get it a finer resolution so it would be clear what the differences in the depths were.
So that's the 82% reduction, the 10-year, 25.
Yes.
Okay.
And I did not show the 25-year storm and the 25-year storage because, again, 100% reduction. The next one is the 10-year storm event. This is existing conditions and kind of what you would expect compared to the 25-year existing conditions. It's flooded, not as much, obviously, as the 25-year storm. This is what the 5-year storage option gives us in terms of reduced flooding. And again, I didn't show the 10-year and the 25-year options because they would show no flooding at all. And then finally, the 5-year, 1-hour event with the existing conditions, no storage option. That's what that looks like.
And do you have a notion about the frequency of the 10-year events? Is it more frequent than?
It's more frequent, certainly by definition. We didn't look at how often that is actually happening.
Okay.
So, a couple of questions. So I'm going to just sort of paraphrase it then, my understanding. So one, you chose a 25-year event because that's encompassing, meaning 25 years captures the events that the people in the room have experienced, the community has communicated to us as problematic, meaning the pictures that we've seen all would be captured by this intervention.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then you did a before and after, and you showed anywhere from 56%, you chose volume, essentially. It's the amount of water we would stand in, which is the unit of measure before and after, and reducing it by anywhere from 56% to 100%.
Correct. And again, those reductions, those percentages are volume, so it's the reduced volume, right? The depth and the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I have a few questions about what's contributing to this flooding. Obviously, in the picture, you see a lot of impervious on the south side. But is this the lowest point in the system? And if so, are the properties to the north contributing to this flooding?
Yes, it is the lowest point in the system, and yes, certainly that's where all of the runoff is coming from. It's from the upstream properties, mostly residential, some commercial, and obviously some right-of-way.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
So did you look at, and maybe you said this last time, did you look at whether it would be better to just try to pipe it out of there rather than store it? I mean, my gut tells me piping it on, Route 30 isn't better, but.
We did look at that. There is a bottleneck in the system. I probably mentioned this, hopefully I mentioned this last time. All these pipes, there is, let me back up a little bit further. There's a current large diameter pipe that's located right here. And that was done 15, 20 years ago, presumably to help alleviate some of the flooding that was occurring. That pipe and this other pipe that's coming from Windsor eventually goes into a much smaller pipe. I believe these are on the order of, say, a 30-inch and a 24-inch going to a 15-inch. So there's a clear bottleneck there where just too much flow is coming to a small conduit and can't convey all that. We looked at that option to run a pipe all the way down Lancaster. There's problems with that. Certainly, it's easy to say, well, we're going to run a pipe down Lancaster. Obviously, there's all kinds of utilities, all kinds of conflicts. There'd be a lot of disruption associated with that, clearly. And it would be moving the problem further downstream where there's other bottlenecks, as we know, in the system. So that we looked at that. We didn't perform any detailed analysis, but our feel was that that would be a difficult solution and a complicated and expensive one.
That all makes sense to me.
Can I follow up with that question? So the water's coming from the north. Now, when the system becomes overwhelmed and the water rushes out, there's flooding there, where is that water going?
I believe a lot of it just ponds in this area at the intersection where Banbury, Francis, and Windsor all converge. And I believe it's just over time it drains back into the system once all the water has found its way through. Because there's really nowhere else for it to go. It's a low point.
So there's not like overland rushing to then overwhelm downstream properties during a storm.
Correct.
There is or there is not?
Yeah, I'm sorry, say it again?
Is there overland water rushing to, so that water is contributing to the flood conditions downstream?
Is there overland water flowing from this location downstream? I believe some of it would be flooding into the Wawa lot and running to the east. I think
Commissioner Schaefer, if I can add, just from being there so many times, it does flood into the Wawa lot. It goes up on our residents' property. We have pictures very close to their door, and it backs up on Windsor as well as Banbury. So it is a sizable pond, if you will. And then as the rain subsides and it gets to exit through that 15-inch pipe, but it's not leaving that area and rushing down on someone else. The worse it gets, the more it impacts the residents and Wawa. The level just keeps increasing.
So I'm just trying to get an image of if we do this project and we, we capture the water and control it, is it going to relieve some of our issues downstream when we have flooding? And which I'm assuming downstream is the South Wayne area. I mean, it seems like that's where it would run.
It does. It does run to the east on Lancaster. It eventually cuts to the south.
Right.
On West Wayne Avenue, there's another bottleneck there.
Right.
And then it would eventually go through the Radnor Middle School site.
So Dan, is the, just to follow up on that question, then there's a time period that how long does it take before, a typical storm, will it pass in a half an hour, or an hour? How long does the pond last? Just qualify it, Steve. Is it?
Steve, maybe.
Well, I guess, and I don't mean to confuse things. So what Dan has showed is pick one, a 10-year, 1-hour event. So it kind of portrays you get X amount of rain in an hour, and then it stops. And then that will, am I correct, Dan, the way you're portraying it? When in reality, we can get rain for a day straight. And depending on how that releases and what the soil conditions are, it may not match this model. But it does, when there are ebbs and flows in the storm, so to speak, when there are dry periods, it does drain down relatively quickly.
Yeah, I guess so where I was going is, I'm assuming it's going to drain down relatively slowly when you intervene. So the pond is a stormwater management, a de facto stormwater management tool. If we build the intervention, we're going to enhance that, not weaken it, meaning that it's going to take longer for that, the basin will drain at a longer period of time, I'm assuming, than the pond itself. So it will enhance the downstream, not compromise the downstream. Fair statement, fair action?
I would say that is a fair statement. Again, it's putting the flooding underground. It's giving the opportunity for infiltration to occur, and it's going to be released at a controlled rate.
So I have a policy question, and Peter's not looking over, but now he is. So this may be ridiculous what I'm going to say, but what I see here is a very large amount of impervious, and these businesses are paying into our stormwater fee system, but they're not paying more than anyone else, and they have a lot of impervious. And the question is, I think this is for Peter, is there any way for us to have an assessment in an effort to bring some of these property owners into the cost sharing? We do assessments for sanitary sewer, where the resident will pay to connect to our sewer system, and they'll pay for that connection, and they'll pay for that system. What I'm looking at here is, this is a very finite problem that the entire township is going to pay for. And I know that's why we put the fee system together, and that was the goal. But to me, this group of properties seems to be creating a more of an impact, more intense impact. It's not clear to me that those homes are contributing in a big way. They seem to have a lot of green space. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but the point is, whether we're spending $680,000 or $1.2 million to fix this, shouldn't we be asking Wawa and all these other business owners to contribute?
But Wawa isn't the contributor there. This is the classic. Wawa is the recipient. Wawa's argument, and I'm assuming the homeowners are going to make the same argument. They're the victims. They're on the downstream side, and they're getting the water from that big upstream watershed that is discharging the water. So to me, this is the logic of the fee system. This is everyone paying so that those that are on the receiving side of the large amount of water they're bearing the burden. They're not putting any more or any less than any other community and any other operation in the township, but they're bearing the burden of it based upon their location.
And Commissioners, if I may add, so all those properties, there are ODPs, other developed properties, are charged per square foot of impervious surface, and we have that. So maybe the flip side is what the Stormwater Committee has been working on, especially Mr. Bergmeyer, which was incentives for those ODPs, those other developed properties, to reduce their impervious or to do additional stormwater management on their site. And I just want to add at the very end, Lancaster Avenue is also a contributor to this project, but that's flow from the properties that are adjacent to Lancaster Avenue, but it actually does turn the corner. So it's a considerable amount of water that comes down.
How much acreage is upstream of that intersection?
I believe it's on the order of 13 acres.
Yeah, so you're talking about Wawa, which is 1/10 of an acre. The communities around that, which are postage stamps, or the houses around it, their impervious is very small relative to the contribution from upstream.
Right. Now the flip side of that argument is that it's in Wawa's best interest that this problem be solved, because it impacts their property. And the reason I bring this up is I know in Garrett Hill, when we had extreme flooding on Conestoga Road, we were able to do a joint project at the Rosemont Business Campus and install a very large retention store and release system there. And it greatly enhanced the roadway. You know, the roadway was being shut down on a storm every time there was a storm. So the business campus benefited because the road was no longer closed, and the public benefited because they didn't foot the entire bill. So the question is, you know, I understand. I'm bringing this up because, quite frankly, you know, these businesses, it's nice to say they're downhill, downstream, whatever you want to say, but they're also built in a place that was probably a bog at one time, okay? And they chose to build those properties in that low-lying area. I can assure you that, you know, before that was paved over and that was dirt, there was a lot of water there. And they said, nah, we're going to pave over all this and everything's going to be fine. This is what everybody does. So the question is, what are we going to do? You know, $1.2 million to solve a problem that helps these businesses seems like we should be asking those businesses for help. And they're not, we cannot force them to do it, except through maybe an assessment. And that's why I want Peter to opine on that legal question.
Can I just say that philosophically, you know, the underpinning of the fee is that every sinner is paying for his share of the sin every year. So Wawa has X amount of impervious coverage. We add it up, and they pay for that. They pay for it every year. This particular project may benefit them. The next one is not going to, but they're still paying, because the way this works is you have everybody pay for what they're contributing, and then we have advice about going after the problem, and everyone contributes to paying, and you theoretically are paying for your share of the communal sin because you're paying for your paved area. So I agree that it does seem like they're benefiting from this first project, but over a 20-year span, after we've done 20 of these projects, those property owners with a lot of impervious are going to have contributed more money towards all those collective projects than anybody else, because they're the biggest sinners, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and John, this is not a Wawa relief program. The beneficiaries are the people sitting in the audience tonight, the Guthlines, and also everybody to the east, downstream of the confluence of these three streets, Francis, Banbury, and Windsor. That water in these severe storms that Mr. Weibel is talking about, that water does pool there, but it also moves as a real force to the east down Lancaster Avenue, and it ends up in places that we don't want it to be. For example, in front of the firehouse. And secondly, it ends up in the stream down near the middle school and causes serious problems for the property owners down there. So there's lots of beneficiaries here that that come out. And I think this, Don, you've always espoused a more programmatic approach to these problems instead of going from this particular and then to the general. I assume you like the fact that there's been modeling done here of not just this particular intersection, but also of what's upstream and what's downstream from it. So I have two other things that
Can I get a response from Peter, though, just on that question of assessments for stormwater projects?
There has to be a rational relation between the assessments and what we're charging. And I think as it's set up and as has been explained the last 5-10 minutes, the way it's set up, everyone is, as Elaine put it, everyone's paying for their own sins. And this, the stormwater being created is a result of the amount of impervious surface on a site, so it makes complete sense to attach our fee to that amount. So I think the way it's set up works now, and I think we would have problems if we tried to penalize people who we now find are built in the wrong areas. And while we may assume back whenever it was built up, they had stormwater problems at that time, that's an assumption and not a fact. So I think the way it's said is the best way to do it.
The other question I have, you did mention the word infiltration at one point. Maybe I'm getting too far ahead here, but if this is approved by our board and we go ahead with the engineering and the construction, how much infiltration would there be as opposed to just detention and then discharge? Is it too early to say?
I think it is somewhat too early to say. I think part of that work would have to do a series of geotechnical investigations, borings, infiltration tests. It's possible there would be very little infiltration. Maybe there'd be a lot more than that. I'd say the majority of what this will do is detention, I think. I mean, that's really what this is about, is getting the flooding that's happening on the surface, putting it underground in a controlled system. The infiltration, I look at that as really a bonus. If we can infiltrate there, that's great, and we
have
reduce
some
the
people.
volume.
We have some people that come before us, and they're good people. They would never agree that it's a bonus. They would say it's an absolute necessity and essential. Anyway.
Well, again, it's a flood problem for large-sized storms. And if we could take all that water out and infiltrate it, that would be ideal.
So, Dan, I mean, it's safe to say that the amount of infiltration will be 100% of the amount that Mother Nature allows, meaning that this
Correct.
is a little bit unlike you can decide what rate you want, and you can tell at any rate you want, but the infiltration will be determined by the site conditions, and you'll achieve 100% of what the site conditions allow.
That's correct. It's only going to infiltrate what, as you said, Mother Nature has intended at that location. And the system would be designed, I assume, to drain down within about 3 days. That's kind of typical, 2 to 3 days. We couldn't store for much longer periods of time to force it to infiltrate. We need the system, we need the storage to be open for the next storm to come by.
So I want to just take this infiltration digression to make to repeat my plea, which I made the last time we discussed this, which was to not abandon the idea of taking some of that macadam or asphalt and making it back into green space by taking that turning lane out and using that triangle as a natural bioswale infiltration device. That was dismissed at the committee level sort of because of complications of dealing with traffic. But it's my suspicion that the neighborhood would really support that because it would be great traffic control. And I don't think it may not be as complicated as it sounds. And it would be a very nice example of trying to incorporate some infiltration where all we have right now is runoff. So I'm urging
we can
this board.
we can make that choice when we get to the engineering.
Well, is that, so
Point.
that is a question I have. If we passed the resolution tonight, at what point are we choosing, like, the details of which storm, when does that all happen? When does that detail get decided?
Commissioner Schaefer, if I may, I think that's in my memo. That's one of the parameters we need to provide Dan Weibel with for writing that RFP.
So for tonight, we would decide that?
I would suggest that.
Okay.
So, a matter of fact, I was going to ask, if it please the commissioners, if we step out of order, since we're on Banbury,
Right.
and there is a resolution in there for Banbury, if we could, if that could be next in line. So, my recommendation is tonight, we instruct, if it so pleases this board, that the RFP will be written. You have some idea of costs. Tonight would be the night to provide that parameter for what the design should be held to. And just one last item, in the notes Dan has, he notes soft costs such as survey, geotech design, et cetera. That would also include inspection. So that's a six-figure number. So there is going to be an addition to whatever those estimates are. But that would be my respectful request.
So did we get a recommendation from the committee or from you on what parameters you suggest?
No, we have, the thought was you have Dan's three options.
Yeah.
And we have Heather, Paul Bergmeyer, Dan Weibel, and myself to provide the board with input as to what you feel might be the best return on investment for these storms.
Shall we segue into that portion of it then?
Wanted to talk about this portion, so before we leave this, right? So one of the original justifications for the rain tax was that everybody benefits, right? I mean, so when we're talking about sins. It's always fun to me to hear people talk. People who are not religious talk about sins. Maybe Elaine's very religious. I guess she is. But
let's not be personal.
Okay, right. Yeah. So it's funny when we invoke, religious
I don't
concepts.
think she meant it as a sin. Though.
All right, but I would say I haven't committed any sins with respect to stormwater, and I don't know anybody who actually has.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Okay, well, it's a unique when we have the people that we see invoking that unique metaphor. But the key that we said is everybody benefits from all of these stormwater interventions. This is the first one we're looking at, and thank you very much. I mean, this is, I think, a quality job on isolating the problem, depicting it graphically and understandably, and showing the benefits and the different intervention levels and what benefit you get from doing that. So, excellent job. But I can look at this and I can tell you that not everybody benefits from this. There's a few people that, and John Fisher just made the point. Hey, look, I can see who's benefiting from this. It's mainly a business, and I know there's a couple of houses. Nobody in the second ward is going to benefit from this. Well, Rich, they will benefit. Well, I can tell you, anybody from the second ward, I would say just don't drive there in a 25-year rainstorm. Avoid that Wawa, go to another one. So I think it's clear that this does not benefit everyone in the township. It's obvious. Now, I know this is only the first. Well, we're going to have 20 more of these, and we're trying to decide. But it's funny that we decide on this one, and I guess it happens to be in the president's ward, too. So it's very coincidental. So how did we pick this one as the issue, and it happens to be in Jim Higgins' ward, who's, with all due respect, he's the president. But
I would just like to address that.
Yes, please.
I would like to say that when we sat down, and from day one, when we worked with the township and the documents and the data that were presented to us, I didn't know where ward lines were. I didn't know where watersheds were. This is a process that we didn't base decisions on whose ward, whose commissioner. We based it on facts and on data and information supplied to us. You have to start somewhere. We picked Ithan Creek to start. It could have been Meadowbrook. It could have been one of the other watersheds. You have to start somewhere. We picked an area that was a watershed that was known to frequently flood and significant flooding. So hence our second reason we're here tonight is so that we can do a comprehensive study for the watershed, so we can stop hearing it's in my ward, it's not in my ward. When we're not basing it politically, we're not basing it per ward, we're basing it on engineering data that is available to us, making the most intelligent decisions for you.
Well, why? Well, I would say that what we do know is that there are emails talking about the people that you are targeting to provide the benefit for being the Democratic leadership of the board. But
I have never received.
Yes, you did. And it was, we know, the quote was, we know who cares about the stormwater. It's going to be, we know, no. But my point is this. The first project happens to be in the president's ward, and it just happens to be that. I guess you're right. It's tremendously coincidental. I doubt that that's a coincidence, but that's just me, and reasonable people can differ on that. But what there also isn't here is there's no documentation of any downstream benefit. Now, Jim just went on, there's all this downstream benefit. We're not talking about the downstream benefit, and what we are talking about is a very specific project that does not appear to have a great deal of impact to very many people. And I know of other ones, not even in my ward, which I would rank above this. So I guess I want to make that point that we're taxing everyone. We're supposed to be benefiting everyone, and I think this is clearly a demonstration where we are not benefiting everyone.
Well, with all due respect, we post our agendas online and what we're going to be discussing, and I would be very open to you coming to one of our meetings.
I've been there. I've sat through many meetings, well, at least a couple. I've sat through a few.
For 10 minutes without any interaction or discussion. I would like, in the year 2016, honestly, instead of at the end of a board meeting, banter back and forth or what we have or haven't done, when alone this year, I think we've been at 7 board meetings and put forth about 20 memorandums in 22 months to the board. I think we've done an excellent job. Our committee members are so dedicated. So for you to kind of get on this pedestal and not come to a meeting to please discuss
I have come to the
have.
meetings, and I've watched these
You
meetings
have
on
not
television.
stayed for an entire meeting.
You know, Rich, she's making a valid point.
My point is not. That's irrelevant to the issues. The issue at hand.
It's not irrelevant because
it is irrelevant. Heather, it's irrelevant. This does not benefit a lot of people in the township. You can't say it does. It doesn't.
So it's not going to benefit one of the houses, maybe whose child's in that area, who's biking and a storm comes up, and he's sitting in 4 feet of water.
It's going to benefit a few people. There's a few people it benefits. There's no question it benefits a few. When you look at how many people it benefits, and there's 9,000 taxpayers, 30,000 people in the township, and we are collecting money from all of them.
How do you know that?
And we have, this is the project we come out with as our initial one. But it's not, Heather, I'm not attacking the Stormwater Committee.
Yes, you are attacking the Stormwater Committee.
I'm not.
Because the next
it just
project
sounds
could
that
be
way.
in your ward.
Okay,
or
all right.
Schaefer's
all right, well, I would hope
we don't
that it
have
was.
the data for that yet.
I would hope it would be. But this is the issue. The Stormwater Committee was put in an impossible position to be able to administer this program. And this is absolutely the case. Well, what we will see over the next 20 years and the next 20 projects is going to be more of this type of favoritism and there's more of this type of
You don't need to respond
potential.
to what he's saying. We don't, so you don't need to.
Well, I just find it interesting that we're the only advisory committee that you're pulling this
Your committee has done.
political when we're basing it on
Your committee
data.
has done a Herculean effort.
I'm astounded.
It was because of the political emails that we saw coming through your board.
There were no political.
We'll show them to you, sure.
So,
I'd love to see them.
Rich, I don't agree with what you're saying. I may have stated that some of those property owners may get more benefit than the rest of us, but no one can claim that a stormwater system doesn't benefit all, because it does. No matter how you look at it, the rate of flow through that 15-inch pipe will be reduced once the system is in, which means downstream the rate of flow will be decreased.
Again, I'm not saying there's not some benefit here. There is
always
some.
benefit.
When you weigh the cost and to the relative benefit to the most constituents, I don't think this does it.
According to the diagram, we have 3 to 4 feet of stormwater in a street. So just hope. According to you, there's no benefit. I say
I know
if there's
other
a fire,
places that are not even in my ward that I think are more problematic.
If there's an ambulance call or a fire, there is no access from Lancaster Avenue up that road. So you can talk about, oh yeah, you can go around and add 2 minutes and that's someone's life. So you can do that, Rich, and you can run government like that, and we can
Well,
not
if that's your
do our
criteria, then let's look at the analysis and see how many people we block with the various flooding. I will bet you that this is not where we have the most blockage of access to the most constituents. I doubt that.
Well, considering that stormwater's gone unchecked for 50 years, I would entertain the idea.
It's not unchecked.
Tell me what project's been done. I would like to know.
There's been huge amounts of money, millions and millions of dollars spent on stormwater. And actually, Steve, I'm surprised you let this go on every meeting. We haven't touched stormwater. Of course we have. Of course we have. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. We fixed the culvert last year.
I'd like to say a couple of things here. There is no project in this township or any township in the state of Pennsylvania that will benefit everybody.
But shouldn't we try to maximize the benefit per dollar spent?
Second of all,
constituent?
I didn't hear anybody on this board say that this project would benefit everybody. I said that it would benefit people downstream, the firehouse area, and even beyond. The inundation of floodwaters.
Well, then show that. Where's the data?
That stream.
Mr. Weibel, that's just supposition. That's not fact. We haven't seen that.
I think Mr. Weibel has that information. This has benefit far beyond the people, the Guth lines that are here, far beyond their property and the people on Windsor and Banbury and Francis. So to say that somebody up here has said this is going to benefit everybody is not true. And it is a benefit to all the people in the township because we all use the roads. We all need to traverse those roads when the sun is shining and when the storm is blasting. So I think I had more things to add. The other thing I wanted to ask Dan was if the system is designed by an expert and constructed properly, what's the maintenance picture to make sure this does what it's intended to do? Do we have the power to design something that will not need a lot of maintenance?
It's going to need maintenance, for sure. The maintenance is at the inflow points. And for a system like this, you would design pre-treatment structures. Really, they could be maintained like any stormwater inlets. So there's going to be a sump where sediment, trash, debris is going to collect. And some number of times per year, say twice at least, that would have to be cleaned out.
Good. Go ahead.
And I think there's already an existing system there that Steve has mentioned that they do maintain and they clean.
All right. Commissioner Curley said a minute ago he'd like to move into the consideration of, I think it's Resolution 2015-132, is it? Are we okay to move that in that direction?
Mr. President, if I may, just for one comment based on the stormwater. We can go back for 5 years, and I can list you projects we should have done by now. North Wayne Field, South Devon Road, Midland Avenue, Banbury, South Wayne Avenue, Mayland Road Bridge, Shimoni Road Bridge, culvert by the park, Fenimore Woods, Sawmill and Darby Paoli, Lancaster and Aberdeen, Lancaster and Conestoga, Conestoga at the Rosemont Plaza all the way down underneath the bridge. Those are projects that really don't take much engineering. Sorry to all the engineers and the Stormwater Committee. Those are problems, have been problems, serious problems for the last 5 years. We can just move on those. I don't think it takes a whole lot of study. We've seen those issues and problems. I can tell you that we can design all those, we can do studies. What my experience has been that we can go in that and we can design those, but water is going to do a lot of amazing things. These are problems. I've seen it. Folks are going to tell you these are problems. So we can do all these things. These issues right here are going to solve major problems in the township. So there's a list here of these projects. We can disagree, and I know we'll have disagreement. These all need issues right here. So this whole list are projects we can get going. And I can tell you South Wayne and Midland are two big issues that it doesn't take a whole lot of rocket science to figure out water's coming from many points down to these collection areas, and you've got to stop the water coming. Banbury, all these issues. Sawmill and Darby Paoli, if you want to see one heck of a flood, 5 years ago I thought there was one heck of a lake that we saw in one area there. It's awful. So you have all these projects, so to say we don't have projects or the Stormwater Committee isn't doing their job, there's a list of projects right here. And we've got to make major changes here. So when it rains, and then you've got Compound Midland Avenue to a horrible sanitary sewer project as well. Those are two right now that we should be working on, we should have done 5 years ago. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Steve, did you think it was appropriate to do 2015-132 resolution or 2015-133?
I'm sorry, Commissioner. So it's Resolution 2015-132, which would basically, the board would authorize CH2M to prepare a request for proposal for professional design services for the Banbury Way flood mitigation project for a not to exceed fee. And again, I truly think it would be good that we, through the board in a public meeting, determine the parameter for the design that the RFP will be based on.
So I would like to move the passage of Resolution 2015-132 with the direction that it be the bids be, or the design work be pursued under option 3 as presented to us.
Second.
Commissioner Clark seconds it.
Can I start off with a few questions?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. So a little background. This has all the elements that I've complained about at North Wayne Field. This has all the things satisfied, meaning that this is what I wanted, was a before and after that lets us see if there's an impact and measure that impact, quantify that impact. So this has those elements, and in my opinion, this should be the model that we should use for North Wayne Field. I don't mean a hydraulic model, I mean the process that we use for North Wayne Field. The one part that isn't your entity's part, it's our part. The discussion that Rich had that before this, in part, this is why I believe we need the watershed approach. What I want us to do is divide the township into watersheds. Then we use the metaphor, and I think it was a metaphor that Elaine used, about sinners. And we say, okay, look at all the people in this watershed. They're contributing this amount of money over a defined period of time. Is this intervention the best intervention for them? For $1 million of their money, is this the best intervention for them? So it's hard for me to tell if this is the best project unless I see it within the context of your budget for all the other projects. So, and I don't have that information in my head right now, so I don't know if you have that so that we can see that. And then what I think we have to do is we have to look and see, is this intervention for, $1.2 million or $900,000 to $1.2 million, is that the best intervention? Okay. Regarding a little bit about the process, there's an element of art and an element of science in modeling, and you don't keep modeling forever, you stop at some point. And I'm comfortable with where you stopped, meaning I'm comfortable with, with how Dan characterized the downstream effect. And there's numbers behind that, but I don't know, I don't think it would be prudent for you to model the downstream effect. I would work with the qualitative statement that you made that you're going to delay, you're going to take the passage of the water that would pass through that intersection in 2 hours, and you're going to convert that to 3 days. And by definition, that's absolutely going to have a positive effect all the way downstream into the other parts of the township. So I'm comfortable with the amount of the technical work that you've brought to this point. I think there's a little bit of a 2-for-1 in it, which is another thing, meaning that this will have an immediate tactical impact on that intersection, and then it will have a strategic lower level impact on the downstream part. But that's a 2-for-1 that makes this advantageous to me. Why are we paying, this is more for Steve and the administration, why are we paying CH2M Hill to prepare an RFP? Why don't we just tell them to come back with it, tell them and Gannett to come back with an RFP for plans and specs?
We could, the usual process, Commissioner Curley, is whenever an RFP, regardless of the cost, we come to the board to get authorization to do that. And you'll see that again in another resolution where we're asking to go to RFP for the rest of the watershed study. And this board could very much say, we would like to see CH2M continue that, forget the RFP, and have them provide a proposal that we come back to you with.
So I was reading this, that they're going to issue they're going to write an RFP, and then they're going to issue that, and other firms are going to apply, they're going to then answer the RFP.
That's the way the RFP for the stormwater administrator position was done.
Okay.
So they would administer, they wouldn't be necessarily the design firm.
Right.
And the anticipation was there would be multiple projects in many various stages throughout the years of our stormwater fee, and they would help address them, but we could have multiple firms doing design, inspection, and so on throughout.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like an unnecessary level of complication to me. If it were me, I would simply go to Gannett and CH2M Hill and get an RFP and save $3,100. But I don't know, we can have that discussion if you want.
Well, the other possibility, why are we not just going to CH2M for this work?
We could. We were just, excuse me, we were just going by what some of the parameters were when we started working with CH2M, and the contract that they provide is that one of their tasks would be they would write the RF request for proposals.
So you want them to kind of, I don't mean this, you want them to be sort of an intermediary between, you want CH2M Hill to be an intermediary between you and the design firm, correct?
Correct, but I'm also open that since they did the Ithan Creek, you know, we're open to if either they write the request for proposal or they actually do the assessment, either way.
Steve, what do you think?
I think for continuity's sake, we were actually just discussing this. So the way the stormwater administrator position was created was not to have this firm, in this case CH2M, do design. The thought was, like I said, there's going to be all these concurrent projects. Their job was to manage those projects, manage the budget, and provide information to the Stormwater Committee. That's the way it was based. That being said, I think that model should be continued, and that gives us access to various engineering firms, whether it's Gannett Fleming or anyone else. What I would say is we don't have to follow that and step outside of that for the next resolution, which is where we're requesting to do basically model the rest of the township. I think the board and the Stormwater Committee have a level of comfort with what Dan has done in Ithan Creek. So for this one project, maybe we change that resolution to CH2M comes back to this board at the end of January with a cost proposal to model the rest of the township. They'll have our input to do so.
Yeah.
I still think the design.
How about, so to that end, to me, I would just reach out to Gannett Fleming or CH2M Hill for this project. And then if you prefer CH2M Hill in that capacity as the intermediary, then just reach out to Gannett and get a price from Gannett at no cost. You know, I would imagine that that they would supply that. I mean, we don't have to pay someone to give us an RFP, correct? We can
request proposals. It's no cost for any of the engineering firms we use. The reason for the request for proposal format is to make sure all firms are providing the services we need in that same, so that we have all apples to apples throughout the evaluation process.
All right, well, at $3,100, it's not a huge amount of money, obviously, but it seems like an unnecessarily complicated step.
Don, I think we do need a separation from the firm who is doing the study work from the firm who's doing the engineering. So you would never ask your engineer to do the study that results in them getting more projects. So
okay.
Well, it's not just the
need to
studying;
separate
it's the
that.
management too.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
they're managing this whole program in addition to studying it.
All right, so then my last point is regarding the different options. There's roughly essentially a marginal cost between option 2 and option 3, right? Do you have that? Can you hand me that? Yeah, here, I got it here. So you're talking about, I guess it's a little more than marginal, but if we could solve a problem, we can make a problem better, and then a year later you came back and said, you know what, you can solve it for $200,000, we would view that as a bargain, $200,000. So wow, you can make a problem go away for $1.2 million, then to me there's some merit to option 3 relative to the other ones. And the logic of this for me is that I'm seeing all the things in this that I'm not seeing in the other projects that we've evaluated. So what I need before I can make a decision is I need to see the stormwater management budget so I can see, how we're spending. We raise about $2.5 million a year with this, right?
$1 million.
$1 million.
But we've raised 2.5 and we haven't spent any yet. So we have about 2.5. We have about 2.5 million available. And what I need to see is, okay, here's 2.5 million, here's what's available, here's what needs to be done, and then I'll make a decision about whether this is a good project.
Can we at least go forward and get requests for proposal for
I mean, that's not the motion, and there may be other commissioners who don't need to see that budget because we've seen it, so.
But we haven't seen it. It wasn't, but we didn't even approve it, right?
What happened was so you had a 5-year plan from the Stormwater Committee. It was in the version 1, manager's recommended budget version 1. They wished to do some additional work, so what Mr. White did, that got zeroed out.
Right, so we didn't see this.
So you will get, in January, you will get their budget, which you'll have to adopt by ordinance.
But no, we don't know. That's why it was taken out. I mean, I'm sorry,
we
but
know
you're
what the
characterizing
funding
it that
is.
I didn't review the
We
document.
know what funding is available.
Okay, we know how much funding is available. We don't know what projects are there for us.
Yeah, but
My
we're not going to know that for months and months and months.
Well, we're going to know that in January is what I'm
No,
hearing.
because it's blank now because we're doing township-wide modeling.
It's safe to assume that the level of funding is a small part of the overall need. Probably 1%.
So what was going to happen is
we can sit
this
here
board
and
will get that.
analyze that. And Don, I respect what you're asking for, but quite frankly, I don't think there's enough. Let's put it this way: if we took the time to create this very comprehensive analysis in terms of need versus funding, it may take us 2 years to do that. And at the end of the 2 years, we're going to realize we need to just get some projects done. This is what Bob is referring to. It's time to act. Now, is this project the best project to do? In my opinion, I'm not going to be here next year, but in all fairness, the reality is we need to do a project, and we need to start addressing streets that have 2 to 3 feet of water in them when it storms. So, it would be great to do that analysis, but in the end, we really do need to act.
Yeah. Now, fine, that's everything's
right.
Everything's appropriate. Yeah. And
if we need 100 million and we get $1 million a year, it's going to be 100
sort of
years.
pushback against that is that in the first week in November, we had a budget. We had a stormwater budget, and with that budget, we would be able to look at this and prioritize. And so I don't know that we need 6 months to get a stormwater budget.
Was this in that budget?
They've put together a 5-year capital plan.
Yeah,
it wasn't in our budget, but they put together a 5-year plan.
So
she can tell us.
We had a budget the first week in November, and then that budget was taken away and was not part of what we approved. Okay, and all I need to do is I need to see that budget to see how this fits into our priorities.
Yeah, so that budget is factual. We didn't adopt it, but the point is the list of projects and the estimate.
I don't think that's accurate, though, John. That's why we didn't adopt it.
But it isn't the only question since it got left open, right?
No, I think
it's up to us how to spend it.
So what happened, the budget was zeroed out. The intent is that the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee will come back to this board in January or as soon as they are done with a specific budget, and that by ordinance will be adopted and made part of the budget. So as of right now, moving into 2016, no, we do not have an approved budget for this work.
Well, can we make it easy on them and include this at the outset? I mean, that's possible, right? This will be set forth at the beginning.
Are you comfortable telling us that? I mean, your group probably better than anyone in the township right now has the best understanding of the spectrum of issues. Mm-hmm. Is it your opinion that this is foremost among them, meaning that this is the I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit at $1.2 million, but this is highest among the priorities that you've seen?
This was among the highest of the priorities we've seen
Okay.
in Ithan Creek. That's not to say there might be another project in a different watershed, but in Ithan Creek, where we're starting, yes.
I mean, the long and the short of it is, the reason it's in front of us is because our experts, CH2M, and our Stormwater Management Committee is recommending this to us as their priority for our second project, because you've already recommended the South Wayne design, or the South Wayne rehookup. So, that speaks for itself.
Okay.
This is the priority.
Right. Yeah. Don, just to answer, Paul Bergmayer from the Stormwater Committee. Just to answer your question specifically, we chose Ithan because it drains through the center of town. And so that was our focus first, and that's why we chose that particular watershed, because a lot of the problems are in that area that impact the public the most. And then we said our next criteria was, let's look upstream first.
Right.
And so Banbury is an upstream site that's going to affect downstream. So those two things put together make this the best place to start, and then we start looking downstream from there, or to the left of it over in Runnymede and stuff like that. But that's the place where we want to start.
All right, and
so
that everything, it makes sense. Everything you said makes sense to me. And then it is sort of budget neutral, meaning that if, it's a limited pot of money in the stormwater fund, all these projects are coming from the stormwater fund. So, all right.
And the way I look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, and you're an expert, I believe, in stormwater, right? This is going to eliminate flooding around Wawa, and it's also going to reduce flooding down in front of the firehouse, the middle school, Midland Avenue. So, I mean, this has a pretty lengthy and drastic effect, as far as I can tell, in terms of the amount of people who are going to benefit from this, including the firehouse.
But Luke, where's the documentation of that?
I'm not. Are you a stormwater engineer?
I design stormwater on a daily basis.
I'm not.
So let's talk about that benefit then, because I don't see the benefit. Where is it? What is it?
But this is their job. This is what they do. This is their expertise.
I know they looked at this area, and they say, "Oh, there's other benefits," and so did you said it, and so did Commissioner Higgins. But where is the documentation? Where is it quantified? How can you ask for a $1.2 million approval without saying, "Oh, it helps other places, but we're not going to tell you how much, and we don't care. Just trust us."
I think you'd all be comfortable saying that the effect that it's going to have at the middle school is going to be marginal. And that's part of, I mean, it's not going, the middle school drains, it's that enormous watershed. You're taking a small sub-portion of it and making a modest impact on a marginal. So to me, that's sort of it's the cherry on top that it has that secondary effect. To me, the intervention at the intersection can justify the cost, and then the choice of that project is the mitigating effect that it has downstream.
Yeah, I think this is comprehensive, right? I mean, isn't this what we're talking about, to have effects and how it mitigates downstream in other neighborhoods, things of that nature? So, I mean, I think we're accomplishing our goal, right?
Dan, do you have anything to add to the point of what's going to happen downstream as a result of this?
Working within the parameters of our scope and our budget, as I presented at the last meeting, we ran a model of the entire Ithan Creek watershed. It was a surface model. It told us where flooding would occur. We were able to use that in kind of a combination of qualitative and quantitative fashion, prioritize the list of flooding locations. And again, I think we narrowed it down to about 8 to 10 highest risk flooding locations, and we went through that a month ago. So we did not quantify, it was beyond the scope and really the budget for this study. We did not quantify what the benefits will be all the way downstream throughout the watershed. We don't have the data. We didn't have the data to do that, to build a detailed hydraulic model. But in this case, in this particular small area.
Hold on, you just said it right there. I mean, there it is. We don't have that. And that's fine. They weren't charged with it. That wasn't the scope. You said pick one and give us the benefit. And Don said lay out the interventions and quantify what we'll get for each dollar. And they did that. They did exactly what they said. It's not what they did. The issue is, I know of other places in Commissioner Higgins' ward, if we're going to have it in the president's ward, I think that there's other places where we're going to impact more people and have a more mitigating effect to any problems with emergency vehicles elsewhere. So I don't buy that this is the most critical area.
Like it or not, the process is playing out, right? So we collect the fees, we use the fees to do studies, we use those studies to engage in remediation by modeling and RFPs and construction, right? So that's what's playing out here. And now we're going to have a benefit at the Wawa, a benefit maybe marginal, maybe who knows what it'll be, in front of the firehouse to a certain extent, right? And for the people along Midland Avenue down in South Wayne. So I think this is the process playing out. If we had that modeling for other places, and there was proof of these other places that will provide more of a benefit to more people, then we could get into that debate. But this is what we have right now, and I agree, we need to start somewhere. I mean, you all want to start these projects, right? I mean, that's what I'm gathering, is that it's time to start mitigating some of this flooding. So you're all anxious to go, and I support it.
Thank you.
And Luke, we will have that data, and we will have more sites where we hotspots. That's the whole point of this program. The whole point of having a constant revenue stream is that we're going to have projects like this come along every year, And yes, each one of them is local. There's no such thing as one project that's going to serve the whole township. But as we get as the time goes on, we're going to get to all of the different sections and address the local issues, and hopefully at some point have a cumulative effect. So this is just, it's actually not the first. The first project was the middle school hookup, which we authorized a month or so ago.
Well, actually, the first project was the Shimoni Road Bridge that had collapsed.
I have a question. On option 2, we heard that that a 25-year, 1-hour event has occurred once in the last 20 years, and there was another storm that was a little bit more intense. What about the 10-year, 1-hour storms? Do we have a frequency on those, and do we know? Is it, like in particular, like we know that we've had at least one storm in the last 20 years that met the criteria. I guess it's 2.35 inches. But what about the 2-inch storm?
John, if I can tell you, we've had a 500-year storm, we've had a 100-year storm, so that's why to say 1.2 million is going to solve the issue, it's not. For us to, I don't think there's, all due respect, we're not going to solve, to say 100% you're going to drive by there and every single storm it's not going to be flooded.
No, I think we all,
I hope everybody understands that, because we're not.
If we have the 100-year storm, there may be flooding in the street.
And it's good that you point that out, because I didn't mean to imply that it was going to, I meant to imply that it was going to solve the design.
No, I guess what I'm
I just
looking
mean
at-
for some people may hear that it's going to be the end-all, solve-all, but under certain storm conditions.
If we had a frequency graph showing the number of storms that, the 5-year, the 10-year, and the 25, I would imagine there may be a sweet spot there. I don't know. I mean, by its very nature, you would think, as you go to the 5-year storm, that's more often. So but that may not be the case. I mean, it seems to me that we're getting more intense storms and less intense storms.
But I think those ones, and like Don's referring to, we've had storms that we've still had flooding there, and people decide to drive their cars through it, and then
I know. So So my question is, do we have a frequency graph showing these 3 storm types and how often they occur? And then the other question I'll have is, could this system be built in such a way that we do a smaller system first and then we add on to it later? And is there any benefit to doing that? Or does it add additional cost because we're tearing into the street twice? Or can we tear up one street, do one part of it, tear up another street, do another part of it?
And I think that might be something once we get into the design, depending on the location of utilities, how large the bed is going to be, it could be, and how much funding we have left over. It might be that one year we do 500,000 and we do it in phases, and the next year, when the funding's there, we do another phase.
Generally speaking, you will pay more when you do that. Your economies of scale are gone from a design, construction mobilization standpoint, permitting, survey. So you will lose that when you phase the project.
Okay, so we're probably going to want to go for the, and this is the frequency graph here, or data?
This is the top 10 rainfall events by intensity at Philadelphia International Airport from 1980 through 2013. So you can see that the second on the list, second highest peak was 2.43, which is very close to the 25-year 1-hour. The highest actually was the most recent, or one of the most recent storms at 2.9. The 1-year storm, I'm sorry, the 5-year storm, that was 1.9 inches per hour, and the 10-year storm is about 2 inches an hour, just to give you some idea of where those other storms fit in.
So Dan, we got nearly 33 inches on the 28th.
I'm sorry?
Event 1 would say we got 33 inches in an 11-hour period. 33 inches of rain.
The data of the peak rate, the intensity, the highest intensity was 2.9 inches an hour.
Okay, very good.
But anyway, to answer my question, this is not a frequency of all the storms. So what I'm contemplating is there a sweet spot or not? Meaning if I took all the storm data for the last 20 years and plotted the frequency of those storms, would I find that, trying to do it like a cost benefit, like if I wanted to do a 10-year system,
I'm going to tell you what, I
Yeah,
think the
please.
answer is the 2-year storm is the sweet spot, which is why it's the design volume and the infiltration volume. So the 2-year storm, and that's not what we're trying to do. So I don't think there is a sweet spot. I think it's marginal cost, marginal
The bigger the
benefit.
better, no matter, almost up to a certain point.
I'd like to get back to our resolution, our motion.
Okay. Yep. I'm done with my questions.
Elaine, I think you have asked to modify the operative clause.
Just by adding that we would proceed with the parameters of bidding out option 3.
Option 3, which is a 25-year, 1-hour storm, and the price of that projected is $1,207,000.
Well, I think there's a range, but can I just ask one question, though? The little matter I brought up earlier about including the infiltration triangle, should we make that part of this motion, or is that just something that will proceed when the design is put together?
I think once that we get a survey, I think let's see if we can do it. I absolutely would like to do it. I just don't want to commit to it just because we need to work out things with the township and the residents and traffic. But if there's an opportunity to do that, I think we should look at it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Is there a second to the motion?
Yeah, there's a second. Second.
Okay. Right, if there's no more comment from up here, is there anybody in the audience that would like to comment? Mr. Guthline?
I'm sorry. What did we decide on is the general consensus, the option 3? Is that what?
Motion
people
is
seem
for
to-
that, and there seems to be support right now.
Hi, I'm Jim Guthline from 105 Banbury Way. My house gets flooded right at that intersection. I've stood in water up to here. I've pushed out many cars, helped women out of their cars and pushed them out. Whoever planned Wawa knew what they were doing because it floods right up to the curb and then it gets up to our doorstep and then floods over that curb. So they planned it right. They knew what they were doing. I really thank you for taking this seriously. It's been a major problem that my wife and I, before we bought our home, we didn't know about it. We lived there for the past 6 years. Every time it happens, the reason why this site may have gotten picked, I've documented it. I've called the police to put out the barriers. I've taken pictures. I've taken videos. I have videos of a manhole cover, I don't know how much they weigh, about 150 pounds, coming off of the ground due to the water pressure pushing up with air. That's amazing. I've actually yanked one back into place when it was rattling around like a coin. That's a safety issue if someone was to fall into that. And arguably, that intersection is one of the busiest areas in Wayne due to that Wawa being 24 hours. The amount of customers they turn over is significant. So I would say it impacts a lot of residents and a lot of people just passing through. So I really appreciate it. I want to thank Heather. I want to thank Mr. Norsini and Jim and the rest of you guys for taking this seriously. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Guthline.
Ken Taylor, Roll Avenue. I support the resolution. I support the resolution that we brought up, but I'll do it now rather than come back up here, to go ahead and have the watershed assessments done in the other watersheds in keeping with what apparently is the format of how we will be prioritizing and recommending to this board the projects. And I suggest, related to Commissioner Curley's statements or opinings at the last commissioners' meeting, to try to reconstruct the effect or the authority of the Stormwater Advisory Commission to be more scientific and advisory in the nature of CARFACT. Well, we've heard Mr. Helvering's opining earlier tonight about the inconsistent utilization of CARFACT. And I would suggest that all you have to do is listen to the politically paranoid ramblings tonight of Commissioner Booker to understand why the Stormwater Advisory Committee should not be watered down in its function. In my mind, the ordinance under which the Stormwater Advisory Committee was produced would have been better to recommend even greater power, perhaps even power of the purse, like you do when you would join a multi-municipal authority like the Sewer Authority. But knowing that this board wants to keep control over the power of the purse, I do not suggest you further adapt the authority of the Stormwater Advisory Committee. As Heather indicated, she's bringing science to you. I know some of you, for the purpose of opining about politics, are more than willing to ignore science. I'm suggesting that any change of the Stormwater Advisory Committee would allow more of that and less of that. Thank you.
All right, well, since Mr. Taylor addressed me, this, no, it was directed at me. And so I get an opportunity to respond. This is not political paranoia or ramblings. There's no question Second Ward contributes the highest dollar figure to this fund and is scheduled to get the least, if any, of the money that is put out by the taxpayers of my constituents, who I represent. My job is to represent my folks. There's no question, Second Ward in the Ithan Creek, or in the other watershed, it's the, I think it's a Darby Creek. But it's on the thing over there, but it's on the plan outside. Second Ward does not have these issues. We are, in fact, taxed to pay for the issues in all other parts of the township. None of it comes back to our constituents in the Second Ward. Many of the people in the Second Ward, and other places too, frankly, around the township, believe that this is tyranny, that this is taking money from people and giving them to a favored constituency. Now, Mr. Taylor, you can disagree with that and say, I want to take all the money from everybody and give it to who I want to, and I think that's fair. Most people that I talk to don't believe that that's fair, and that for a fee, if you call it a fee, then you should get a direct benefit from the payments that you make. That's not the case. This is not a fee. This is a tax. This is an inappropriate tax. It's a tax that was improperly authorized, and this is a tax that is improperly spent.
I want to comment also. So Ken, for my part, there he is. The changes that I'm advocating, I believe, would strengthen the Stormwater Advisory Committee, not weaken it. And I believe it would make it more technical, not less technical. So I'm assuming some of those were directed at me, that you thought what I was proposing would weaken the Stormwater Advisory Committee, and I don't believe that anything that I proposed would weaken it. I think it would strengthen it.
I just asked these changes that we would like to be involved, if there are any changes, because we have been so involved for the last 2 years, that I would like an open dialogue.
You've been fully involved because there hasn't been any changes. I mean, that's on the agenda for tonight.
I'm just saying, if there are changes forthcoming, we would like to.
It's on the agenda for tonight, so that's when we'll talk about it. Upcoming next, I'm assuming.
All right, if there's no more comment from the audience, I would like to go ahead and call the vote on the motion as 2015-132 with Commissioner Schaefer's amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And it passes 6-1. All right, let us go ahead to 2015-133, which is authorizing CH2M to prepare an RFP for an assessment of Gulf Creek, Meadowbrook Run, and Darby Creek watersheds, and subsequent authorization to solicit proposals.
So I would suggest we do as was suggested earlier by Mr. Norsini, forget the RFP and just ask for a proposal from CH2M for this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. So
We'll have that for you the
Okay,
second meeting in January.
That we adopt resolution number 2015-133 with the amendment that
Do you want me to say it?
authorization to prepare a proposal instead of request proposal. So remove the language, a request for.
All right, and also strike the 3120.
Yes,
So
and
we're
strike
not-
the 3120.
We're not paying them to submit a proposal. to
Correct.
us.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comment from the board? Any comment from the audience? All right, then we're going to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And it passes 6-1. Thank you.
Can I just say, well, before we move on to the next item, which is sort of our housekeeping, I want to say thank you to the Stormwater Management Committee for bringing us these projects, for the extraordinary work that you have done for the last 2.5 years. It's been really incredible what you've produced. We're now sort of really getting in gear and getting some real action. But just because we're seeing the action at this point doesn't mean that there hasn't been an incredible amount of work done in the last year and a half, from finding our administrator, from developing the incentive program, from setting up the whole administration of the program, doing the analysis of the watersheds, overseeing all of the work that has been coming to you in terms of repair and maintenance. We have, in addition to all of this capital work, we also have like 59 miles of pipes and countless culverts and I think like 1,500 manholes or inlets, excuse me, that this group also has to kind of monitor all of that maintenance work. And when the projects come in front of them, they have to assess them. So it's a thankless job because this is a controversial topic. It's a lot of money. It's very emotional. It affects people's homes and their values. And, there's a reason that nobody did anything about this. Well, nobody did big projects of this for many, many years because it's spending a lot of money and it's hard to justify it because you're taking little projects that cost a lot of money at once. So thank you. Everyone in this township is grateful to you, and keep up the good work. Thanks.
And if I can just add briefly, particularly Heather and Regina Majorsack have spent time outside of their committee meetings to meet with me, to show me, to be on site with me, to look at the middle school, for instance, and to go around there and to help with trying to get some grant money and things of that nature. So these people are really invested in what they're doing. So everybody should know that. They spend a lot of time on this.
So is Paul Bergmeyer as well. He's with us. And I want to thank the Guthlines for their patience. I know when they first contacted me about this, it was 3.5 years ago, and I wish we could move the process quicker, but you've been very patient and you've put up with a lot. It's not done yet because we still have at least two more steps to go, but I think we're going to get there.
And I would recommend that the Stormwater Committee document, right, when you make claims that it's beneficial downstream, it would be beneficial to present that information instead of just making the statement. And I think that you reduce your credibility by saying, well, it's going to help, but we don't know how much, and it's outside of the scope. And I think that we reduce the credibility of the Board of Commissioners in doing that same thing.
All right, I think we're now at the resolution is 2015-131, which addresses the composition of the Stormwater Committee and the plan would be to have eliminate the reference in the ordinance to having members of the committee come from particular wards, discrete wards in the township. And so I won't read the whole resolution. I'm sure the other commissioners have read it and may have questions, but does anybody want to move it?
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you.
And I will say, as far as the practicality of this, whatever merits we thought we were putting in place when we did the ward system, in practice, it's hard to find somebody with stormwater expertise from each ward. And in my ward, Ward 4, I've been advertising in my newsletter for almost 6 months now, and nobody stepped forward. So it really, it's becoming more of a detraction than any benefit it may have had, which I'm not sure what benefit it had to begin with, but I wholly support doing this because we're all neighbors. We're all going to look out for each other, and if wherever the expertise is, let's tap it.
Are there any other comments from?
So when this was brought up, the intent was to allow Regina to be reappointed, and because she was redistricted. So the intent was not to change the way that we were the practice. It was simply to not let a technicality stop Regina from being appointed. So if we're going to eliminate that, the ward approach is not working. In my opinion, it's not working also for the reasons you said. But we need a geographic representation. If the group is going to be an advocacy group, then that advocacy needs to be distributed throughout the township. I still believe, and tonight we saw the reason for it. We saw the argument of Elaine used the sinner metaphor. That That's the watershed approach. That's why we should be dividing the township by watersheds, funding it, and then doing little, here's the watershed, prioritizing for that watershed. In the absence of that, we still need the geographic representation on this board, in my opinion. So what I think we should do is simply add a whereas clause that says, whereas the board, the BOC redistricted voting wards in 2014, then strike A and replace it with existing members who were redistricted may continue to serve and represent the ward from which they were appointed. Then that will allow us to reappoint Regina continuously as a representative, and then it will allow us to take time to determine whether and how we want to have a geographic representation on the board, or whether we want to change the board. Right now, I see the board's role as part technical and part advocacy. Tonight, I saw the benefit of the technical part, and I want the board to be technical. I think you've got plenty of advocates for stormwater. I think your group needs to be the group that we turn to for technical answers. So I think tonight we simply create the mechanism to allow Regina to be reappointed, and then we would reappoint her in, presumably in January like anyone else, and then we have another discussion about the role of the Stormwater Advisory Committee.
But Don,
state the motion?
the way you're discussing this, now we've approved doing the other watersheds. So one would hope that the prioritization comes out of the benefit. Where's the next spot you work that we have the greatest benefit? As compared to using, well, no, we have to do a project in that watershed.
No, so if what you want to do, if that's what you want to do, then business as usual. My opinion is that's a mistake. That's the exact opposite of the fee schedule, the fee process. The logic of the fee is what Rich said. I know you hate hearing Rich say that, but the logic of the fee is, I live in this watershed, I pay into this watershed, I either get a solution or I contribute to solving the problem. And so that's the reason why we should separate the funds based upon watershed, and then have essentially what we're doing, just do 3 of them in parallel. And then an example like tonight, if we take that $1 million or $1.2 million, it's essentially a zero-sum game. Right now, you're taking $1.2 million from Rich. And I know you hate having it expressed that way, but you're taking $1.2 million from Rich and his constituents. If you had this in a watershed process, you wouldn't be taking any money from, you would be keeping, all that money would be contained in the watershed, and you would say, okay, $1.2 million, this is the highest priority for that watershed.
Well, but you're talking about, I mean, we're off topic from what we're trying to do right now, correct?
No, I think the resolution is off topic. The resolution isn't what, I was the one that brought this forward. It isn't what I brought forward.
Well, I thought I brought it forward to keep Regina on there. That was my only concern.
Okay.
So I brought,
in either case, I don't think it does that.
My concern is this. Well, it does, because it eliminates the word requirement, so she can be reappointed. But isn't it on, I get what you're saying about, I'm not disagreeing with you on having the different watershed representation. Isn't that where we come in the interview process? And if we have 5 people on there from Ithan Creek and another one wants to come on, we can say no, right? I mean, isn't that on us to make that decision?
But we are a political body. And political bodies, I know you hate to hear this also, but political bodies sometimes make decisions on political lines. And it doesn't necessarily, it can be ideological and it can be personality. So if your group is going to be an advocacy group, then in my opinion, that advocacy should be spread out. If it's just going to be a technical group, which is what I would like, then we don't need any kind of, because we're just like CARFAC, we're not looking to distribute the advocacy of the CARFAC. We're just looking for technical answers from them.
I'd just like to register my complete disagreement, respectfully, but I just completely disagree with the notion that most people in this township are worried about them getting the immediate benefit in their backyard of the money that the fee that they're spending.
Elaine, I never said that. No, I can't let you, but you're
I think most people
misquoting me.
in this township live in a community. You don't just live in your watershed. You don't just eat and go out to bring your kids in your watershed. You leave your watershed to take your kids to school. You leave your watershed to visit your friends across town. You leave your watershed to go out to dinner in Wayne. All of those things are affected by flooding situations that we all suffer from as a community. The reason we have this fee and we want to start this program is to address the most severe flooding problems that prevent us from traveling around our community. And I truly don't believe that most people in this community think in their watershed terms. And I think they believe in what is best for this community as a whole because they enjoy this community as a whole. And we represent this community as a whole, in addition to representing our particular wards.
Okay. Yes. Don makes valid points. My ward in the Gulf Creek watershed, Gulf Creek, is not part of the problems that you're trying to solve and has been ignored by the Stormwater Committee largely. The fact that we have representation was for a very good reason, Elaine, to eliminate the disparity that we're dealing with in advocates for different areas. It was at least to give some opportunity for every ward, every taxpayer that's contributing to this to have some voice in how the funds are spent. It's very simple, Elaine, and it's disingenuous to make that kind of statement. A fee, a sewer fee, a water fee, you tie in directly. You get a direct benefit. This stormwater fee, for my constituents, there is no direct benefit. It's not a fee, it's a tax. The only way to address that, I disagree with the whole concept of this rain tax and the administration of it, disagree with it. But the only way to even get at any sort of fundamental fairness is something similar to what Commissioner Curley just suggested, a watershed basis with direct benefit running concurrently. Otherwise, there's no chance, especially over time, that this does not break down to a political influence battle.
Okay, why don't we go ahead then with Don has a motion to
All right, so I'll make a motion that we change, we add a whereas clause that says whereas the BOC redistricted voting wards in 2014, and we change A to indicate that existing members who were redistricted may continue to serve and represent the ward from which they were appointed.
So there's
Second.
two motions on the floor?
No, there's only, the first one wasn't, this is the first motion that's introduced.
No,
it was introduced and
I'm putting mine forward as an amendment to yours.
Yeah.
Modifying
see.
paragraph
Yours is an
A
amendment.
and striking and
That's what I
adding
thought.
a whereas.
All right, Rich, are you,
I'm fine with
A second,
Are you gonna
Don's.
Everything you needed to do.
I'm fine with that.
you're going to second it?
And
Okay.
this is going to do
Second
everything
Don's.
that we talked about doing.
Yeah.
Well,
Except solve
so
the
let me
problem
just,
that I have.
No,
I've
you
not-
have to, we have to solve that problem in the totality
Can I-
of the mission to the stormwater group.
so Don, I'm a little confused though, because you had stated publicly and also in private that the Stormwater Committee has expertise and we want it to have a lot of expertise. And if we maintain this ward requirement, we may never get all the expertise we could possibly
That's
get.
right. I want to do away with the word
It's safe to
requirement.
assume that, the engineers and professionals that we would like to be on that committee moving forward don't all live throughout the township.
Yes.
They may all live in one place, in fact. So I don't support, I would like to keep the original motion on, I will support the original motion, which is to remove the ward requirement, even though that was something I really thought was important in the beginning. What I think is more important is that we create the structure such that we improve the likelihood of putting professionals on the committee, not just political appointments. Because if we do ward-wise, we're ensuring political appointments, which is exactly what you guys both have stated that you don't want.
Yes,
Political
I want to do
appointments.
away
No,
with the word. I want to do away with the
I
word.
disagree with that.
Rich, you
Disagree
had
with
stated that you don't want this to be a political
I disagree
appointment.
with your premise. If doing what you say is taxation without representation.
Rich,
That's
we're
what
beyond
this
that.
is.
So at this point, I will support Elaine's original motion. I will not be supporting Don's, because I think Don is correcting an issue, but we need to address a bigger issue at this moment.
Thank you, John.
I would just remind everyone that one of the other projects that we've discussed and tried to accomplish that's stalled is North Wayne Field and Willow, Poplar, and those streets, which are all Gulf Creek watershed. So, and I'm going to support the original, but I also agree that we have to relook at the whole ordinance that established the Stormwater Committee.
John, why not take that opportunity to do that? Why do this twice? I mean, what you just said is what I want to do.
Because we have an immediate problem.
But it's solved. The immediate problem is solved.
And it's overly
pass this,
complex.
we appoint Regina on, yes, it is. We appoint Regina and the other, the third ward, and then they go on business as usual.
No, then
And then we make a policy determination about how we want to proceed.
I think
All
the
right.
simpler we can be, the better.
Yeah. I'm going to vote for the original motion. I don't like splitting our township up into artificial districts, or I call that sectionalism. I like to keep it all together. We're a collegial body. I represent all the other 6 wards in a general way, and I represent my ward, my district in a particular way.
But you're not voted in by anyone else. You're voted by your ward. And I see Mr. Gross out there in the audience so I have my constituents that are residents as well as my business constituents contributing to this, and it's an inordinate amount. And I've heard complaints from all of them. We get nothing from this, no projects, and now you're depriving the 2nd Ward of even a representative on the board. It is patently wrong. It's arbitrary, capricious. It's tyranny. It's the face of tyranny.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience want to say? I'd like to call a vote on this. I'd like to move ahead. All those in favor of Commissioner...
Well, wait, first vote on the amendment.
That's what I'm doing. All those in favor of Commissioner Curley's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nay. And it is defeated 3-4.
That note along partisan lines. Democrats voted against it.
Well, that
Republicans.
cuts both ways, unfortunately, on that one.
Okay. Let us go ahead on Resolution 2015-131, unamended, unexpurgated, and sanitized. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And it passes 6-1.
Note that was not along partisan lines.
It had bipartisan support.
Thank you.
Bipartisan
water
support.
everywhere and all the boards.
So again, this is
water,
also
water
part of the problem.
everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Okay. Do we need to take a long walk or a breathe in?
Break. I'm going home. I swear I'm going home. You're leaving? I will leave.
All right. No more water. We are now up to the 240 Radnor Chester Road Investment, LP, and the proposal for this Board of Commissioners to authorize the sale of a parcel of property that it owns. So, is Mr. Gross, he is here. Is he represented tonight? He is. Will they please come forward?
Evening, Nick Cornelia with Shelley. Remember, this is still contingent upon Mr. Gross's company and the township entering into both an agreement of sale for this property, as well as.
Hold on, Nick, I'm sorry. Can we?
Peter wants to. Yeah.
Can we get this off of the screen? I think is this being broadcast? Thank you.
How do I, I'll exit out? Okay. Okay. You may recall, this has been before the board several times. This was put out by the township for bid with several conditions. One of the conditions being that the township enter into an agreement of sale with Mr. Gross's company and the township. So the acceptance of this bid, of course, is still contingent upon the township and Mr. Gross entering into an acceptable agreement of sale, which of course the township will have to approve at some time anyway. My understanding is Mr. Gross's bid was the only bid for the property.
That's correct.
Okay. And so that's why we're here. Again, I believe this board's heard this several times in the past as what this is all about. It's a 50 by 50 landlocked piece, and it's actually landlocked by all property owned by Mr. Gross. And there is numerous conditions that will be put on this. Well, one, there's already conditions in the bid package itself, and as well, those conditions will be included in any agreement entered into by Mr. Gross and the township. Some of those conditions were extensive buffering, or that Mr. Gross could not put any paving, any building, anything on this 50 by 50 piece, that Mr. Gross keep a certain setback as it currently exists in the township code, and that if this property is developed and merged, that various structures, some of which are non-conforming, would be removed, and the remaining would be just green space, total landscaped area.
So my concern about this last time was just that the neighbors be notified, and at the when that came up, our township manager said after that meeting he would go ahead and notify all the neighbors, and I just want to confirm that that happened.
I can confirm we did that, and that notice went out under my signature as well as the township's.
Okay. And is there anybody here for this matter in the audience?
No, I don't see anyone, but
Okay.
the neighbors were also notified today about this as well. And so, Counselor, we also talked about the buffering in the plan that that you had laid out, removal of the house on 14 Radnor Way, removal of the existing offices, and also some enhancements and maintenance to the circle.
Yes, that is all correct, and that's all will be included in the agreement and in probably any deed that transferred this property to Mr. Gross.
So, and in addition to that, we will maintain that deed restriction so that this parcel will not be built upon, and as you stated, the various setback requirements.
Correct, yes. Yeah. As I said, they were in the bid package, and as well, we've already discussed the agreement, with the solicitor's office, and it would just be a matter of preparing that and including everything that you just mentioned in the agreement and in the deed that would be a transfer from the township to Mr. Gross.
And you and I and Mr. Gross met with the neighbors in the area multiple times and reviewed this entire proposal.
Right. Yeah, one meeting here with several of the neighbors at the township. You were present, Mr. Nagel was present.
And we also met with Mr. Gross at his
right.
building and
Exactly.
the neighbors in prior periods as well. So we'll get all that. We'll take your word for it. We'll get all that worked out, and we'll put this in.
Yes, I think
Okay, talk.
there were 3 memos that were published, but that the commissioners were also...
Right, you've also made extensive communications with the neighbors as well and talked to them about this.
And the board also. This board was, they were copied on all of the memos at the neighbors, and including the October 15th meeting that was facilitated by you and the administration. And then November 2nd, there was a follow-up memo that addressed all the items that we discussed during the October 15th meeting with the neighbors.
All right.
And you and Commissioner Nagel were also present at that meeting, along with Bob and Steve.
Okay.
All right. Let's get a motion here. Is there a motion to award the bid for the sale of Folio 360201-23201 at 240 Radnor Chester Road to the bidder, Mr. Sheldon Gross?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? You have all our questions answered?
I would like to thank Shelley Gross, one of the developers in the area that's really gone the extra mile to talk with the neighbors and to explain the development that he proposes and to talk about the issues that affect the neighbors. And so it's greatly appreciated. Generally, I'm not supportive of this, but I am supporter of Shelley Gross, and so I thank you for that.
I'm most grateful for the township support and this board support. We've had a great partnership, and I continue to want to continue to thank you for your efforts and your ongoing support.
You know,
Well, thank you
frank discussion, candor, goodwill. That's what we have. We don't always agree, but that's.
Yeah, and thank you for cooperating with us on the traffic signal. That was.
Hallelujah.
We took step 2 before we had step 1 in place.
That's true.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Is anybody in the audience that wants to comment? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And the motion passes 6-1. Okay.
I wish everyone a happy holiday and a safe New Year.
Thank you.
Shelley's off to the Temple Toledo game down in Boca Raton, actually.
Go out. Can we have
That's right. That's right.
proclamation, please?
Who are they playing in Boca?
This is the what bowl? What's the bowl? Boca Raton Bowl, and Temple.
Who are they playing?
10 and 2.
Okay. We are now at caucus, the Bartley Exchange and Entrance Plaza project of Villanova University.
I won't be participating in this discussion because I have a conflict with Villanova.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, Bob Morrow,
I'm sorry.
Villanova University. In light of the hour, I will be very brief. We have a project at Bartley Hall, which we hope to add a small addition. The building was built in 1958. It was renovated extensively in 2002. It's the home to our business school, and it serves multiple functions, including a virtual trading floor, classrooms, academic advising, food, coffee, and open seating and study areas. This project addresses 2 basic needs. We're trying to create some flexible seating that lends itself to group and teamwork, in addition to the area that has been previously used as a cafeteria. And we're also converting a side entrance, which has become more of a main entrance, to look a little more impressive. The main entrance, because of geography and some other buildings we built, gets used a little bit less today than the entrance closest to our main gate off of Ithan Avenue. We're going to enclose some existing space that's under the 3 floors above it, and we're going to reconfigure some outdoor space. The net effect is increase of about 1,100 square foot of seating area, about 1,200 square feet of outdoor space. We're putting in some stormwater management where none currently exists, removing 2 and planting 4 trees with no increase to students, faculty, or staff. This shows the location off of Ithan by our main gate. It's a photograph of what it looks like today. You can see the first floor is set back within the facade of the building. Another view from the side shows the approximate depth of the setback.
I'm sorry, could you go back to the overall site plan? So I
Sure.
just go back to one more.
Right across from the pavilion, Rich.
Right across from.
Right, so.
All right, yeah, there's the Lancaster Avenue
And then
is.
Ithan.
That's Ithan. There's Lancaster Avenue at the right there, right? Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Okay, and then, all right. So
That's
that's
our
that little
that's our main gate.
area right there. Completely, really interior.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. You can see the depth of the setback here. This is the current configuration where the building facade ends. There are columns that support the building above, so our proposal is to bump the wall out to this line. The interior space is set up more like a cafeteria. It's used today for eating. This is the food serve area, but it's used even more, almost 24 hours a day, for group work, project work, and study space. currently have 238 seats total. We're proposing to increase that by 20. Again, this is the existing with the columns, the existing outdoor patio space and walkway. This is the proposed, so we bump out the wall from here to here, and we increase the patio space as shown. 4 trees, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a rendering of what the facade will look like with some outdoor space with a pergola overhead, a small patio over here, and this is a proposed look at the future interior where we have the ability to separate the space with sliding doors. We have some comfortable soft seating as well as some cafeteria type seating which remains with a net increase of 20 additional seats. The outdoor area has handicap access here and has stormwater management underneath. We've had comments from all the consultants and we've agreed to comply with all those comments. Any questions?
So what's the benefit? What does Villanova need this for?
Some, as I said, some additional interior space, a different arrangement of that interior space, which lets students study in groups. There's some pods here with softer seating, also over here, and the ability to separate the space. Also some walls to reduce the sound transmission from each side, and the availability to have events and lectures on this side by closing it off.
Well, what are all those little circles on that side? Is that seating?
Seating and tables that can be rearranged.
So that'll be both seating area for cafeteria as well as speeches and
event space, yes, sir, with the option of spilling outside in nicer weather with some doors here, which don't exist today. Today, just the central doors exist.
But is there a need for this, or is this just something that you think would be nice?
No, we feel there's a need for it. As I mentioned today, when it was built, it was envisioned to be a cafeteria. We built another school right across the street from this, the nursing school, Driscoll Hall, which has kind of changed the traffic flow, so a lot more folks now come and go through this door as opposed to the door that faces the interior quad. And it's also, like I said, used almost 24 hours a day for studying and small group project work, things like that.
What's the approved budget, or what's the estimated budget for the project?
About $1.5 million.
Seems like Villanova has plenty of money, huh? I mean, how do you cost justify $1.5 million for that? Is there a cost benefit?
Bob, I don't think we really have to address this, Rich. Come on.
Villanova, all right, you don't have to address it, but I'm just a question.
By right.
I mean, is there a
Why are we talking about economics on it?
I'm interested.
Right, maybe you could ask.
I mean, presumably, I mean, you're going to either borrow that money or raise it. So, I mean, it goes to the constituents.
We already have a
thank
donor.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Wait, was more?
So,
I think it would be helpful to talk about these things. I don't know why you want to ignore commissioners.
Steve and Roger, that first waiver for the recharge, is that a water quality element that's asking to be waived?
Yes, and when they did the perk tests on site, the area did not perk, so there is no opportunity to infiltrate on this site.
So, and then the flooding effect of our stormwater, that will be satisfied, meaning
That's correct. If you look on the second page of my letter, actually it's the bottom of the first page going on to the second page, there's another waiver that is requested which meets the rate control. And on a couple of the storms, and I'm sure Karen can outline this for you specifically, but on 2 of the storms, which would be the 5-year and the 2-year, they don't meet the peak rate control, but they're within 1/2 of a CFS of meeting that control, which, as you know, is
right.
almost indiscernible.
So it's just the sensitivity of that number that, for all intents and purposes, they're meeting it. So
that's correct. It would be the difference of rounding a decimal point would put them in conformance. Okay. It's really you're not able to discern that.
Okay. So I don't have any issue. This is a caucus, correct? So you want our feedback on the waivers, and it's all 4 of them seem reasonable to me.
And what about parking? How are we addressing it?
They're required to add, or they're required to designate 7 spaces for this site on their overall parking plan, which was approved as part of the Lancaster Avenue dorm project. They have a surplus of parking on site, and what we've asked them to do, this requires 7 additional spaces. So they've taken 7 spaces out of the calculation for the surplus that they have on site. So their surplus has dropped by 7 spaces.
And is there any impact on the wastewater with this additional, there should be additional wastewater discharge generated? So where are we with the status?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. So the issue
applicant has indicated that there's no additional students or faculty that will be in these buildings. It's all the existing staff. It's just different configurations and additional seating.
So no additional people, just additional seating for the people you already have. What is the status of the overall CICD and the wastewater module issue that we need to resolve? Has that been resolved, or is that still pending?
We're still working through the process.
Why not finish that up before we go on to the, you have the project at the football field. You're expanding and building a whole new offices and new space there. You have the dorm and the Performing Arts Center. You have the parking deck. Why don't we work through those issues before we start on this one?
We don't see any issues with this project. It's a relatively small project. We have a lot of interest in the business school to do this project. They've been talking about it for quite some time. We have donor interest, so that's why we're bringing it forward at this time.
Don, anything?
Just real quickly, Jim, I'm sorry. I know Amy has some comments. I think we've addressed them with Amy. Karen's written a letter commenting on them, and so I just wanted to bring that up also.
Okay.
But I think they've all been addressed.
And Karen is your traffic?
Karen's civil engineer.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think that's about it for this caucus. Thank you very much.
Well, I guess the one thing that I would say is, and Steve, and Bob's not here, but the township has to inspect all these things, right? Didn't we have an inspector that we hired for the big project?
Well, there's 2 types of inspections. So there's site inspections that fall under engineering, which falls under me. And then there's the actual building construction, which is a function of the codes department within community development.
Right, so when we have major projects going on also on campus, huge parking project, the project that's at the stadium, why would we want them to do all these projects concurrently? We're going to be stretching our resources, and we could miss something that could affect the township.
It's not that we want them to do it or don't want them to do it. They have the right to do it, and they're apparently confident they can run things in parallel.
Well, I'm sure they are confident, but I'm not sure that the township resources are able to accommodate
we
that.
We can't deny an approval based on our limitations.
Well,
we can't.
I don't know what we can or can't do. I'm asking the question.
Rest assured that I am confident that with Gannett Fleming, if we need more inspectors, multiple at different times, we have that capability. So I'm confident we are able to inspect as well as we need to do, which is top notch for any of the projects that Villanova is putting forth.
Okay, is there any other comment from anybody here? All right, thank you very much, folks.
Thanks. Good. Happy holidays, everybody.
We have to wind this meeting up. That completes the planned agenda, but we still have matters of finance and audit,
No report.
And Public Safety, and Parks and Recreation, and Library,
No report.
and Public Health. Does anybody want to do a year in review? All the things that happened of major significance in the last year. Does anybody want to do it?
For the township or for the country?
10:36.
Well, you know, it's late. Yeah. But,
All right.
well, let me just say three things. I made it a habit of reading the departmental reports every month last year, and this year I did it a few times. I would ask that someone on the committee do that occasionally, and really just make sure that you point out the fact that how much work is getting done, because I think it's lost in translation often. The last time I looked, you know, we had the police department had handled, you know, 1,000 calls in a month, a couple thousand calls in a month, and the public works department, you know, took care of hundreds of items. Every department does an amazing job. Parks and Rec.
Well, John, to support something you were talking about there, Public Works, when you look at the tonnage of trash and recycle, and then stop a second and realize somebody picked that up and put it in the truck. I mean, that's a lot of work.
And all the logistics of getting it somewhere. So,
Well, let's remember,
it's
it's time
fantastic.
to reward those people that you refer to, Commissioner Nagel, with a little cash this time of year. So,
Well, how do you give it to them? You just have to wait out there?
Rich, you open your wallet
No,
and you
no.
take the money out.
So what are you suggesting? Like, when your guys are coming, you go out and give them an envelope?
We don't.
Or you send
We're
it to-
joking.
you
We're
send it
joking.
to-
But I want to thank all staff. I want to wish all staff and all directors happy holidays, happy New Year, and wish you all the best of luck in the coming year. And I'll be thinking about you. So thank you.
Right. It's appropriate that the last thing we say is our appreciation to John over the last few years.
yes,
So
we
thank you.
should. Thank you very much. And I don't see anybody running to the lectern, so we're
I move we adjourn.
We're skipping through old business, new business, and public participation, and we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.